Okay, vino maldonai no heno aleno maase adenu konina neno maase adenu koneu. Begin the shiur in Shaare Orah. First, I'd like to dedicate the shiur today. Lilu Shmat Sarah Tziva bat Dovber Ruch Adonai Tenichena Began Eden v'gam Nefesh Esther bat Victoria Reina Ruch Adonai Tenichena Began Eden v'gam Nefesh Chaya bat Rezel Yenta Ruch Adonai Tenichena Began Eden v'gam Nefesh Uri ben Baruch Adonai Tenichena Began Eden. וגם נפש, שרה רבקה בת אברהם משה רוח אדוני תניחנה בגן עדן, וגם נפש יהודית חנה בת אריה לב רוח אדוני תניחנה בגן עדן. להבדיל בין המתים לחיים רפואה שלמה ויהודה בן שלמה אל נא רפנה לו, אל נא רפנה לו, אל נא רפנה לו. רפואה שלמה ודבורה לאה בת יפה ליבה אל נא רפנה לה, אל נא רפנה לה, אל נא רפנה לה. Also for Peril bat Fega Gito El Narafana Laha El Narafana Laha El Narafana La. And also Rafah Shema for Bracha bat Hadassah Ita El Narafana La El Narafana La El Narafana La. So I'm going to go back a little bit in the book here to a topic that was previously discussed in class number 40. So if anybody would look into more detail about that, you're welcome to open up YouTube video Shaare Orah number 40, where we discussed this, but we'll just do a little, because we discussed last week about the menorah and the ner and the candle, yes? So let's see if we can find some little insights, and then we'll continue on with our Shaare Orah where it's supposed to be. So it talks about the fact that Mimena hidliku ner haneshama, that the candle of the soul is lit from her. Of course, this is in the Sha'ar Rishon, the first Sha'ar. The first Sha'ar is discussing the Shekhinah. The first Sha'ar is discussing the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which corresponds to the Malchut. Okay? So what he's saying is the Malchut is what's lighting the other. Let's see what he talks about here. Bi'er Rekanati. Who'd we say the Rekanati is? That Italian Rishon. That's almost all Kabbalah that's on the Chumash, okay? In Dvarim, chapter 10, verse number 17. We talked about it this morning, so it's very fitting. It says, V'ta'am ubot tidbak. We understand, the Rambam says, there's a mitzvah aseh from the Torah to attach yourself to Chachamim and to their students, yes? Learn from where? Ubot tidbak. Because the rabbis ask, how do you attach yourself to the Shekhinah? No, you attach yourself to the Talmidei Chachamim and their students, and that's how you attach yourself to the Shekhinah and to God. Pirusho, now he's going to give, the Rakanati is going to give a little different explanation. Kiyesh inyan besod taharat evarav. There's an idea of the purity of one's limbs. Purity of one's limbs. How did Avraham Avinu know that God did not want him to sacrifice Isaac?
Because he said he's going to make a nation out of this.
Not enough. Because God tested Abraham and said, take your son, bring him as Olah. So if you look in the Akedah, go there quickly and see what it says. Listen to the pasuk. It says here, Vayishlach Avraham et yado, vayikach et hamachelet lishhot et beno. Right? Look at all these words. It goes into a lot of details. Vayavo el hamakom asher amalo vayaroch et ha'etzim, vayakod Yitzchak וישם אותו על המזבח ממעל לעצים, וישלח אברהם את ידו, ויקח את המאכל לשחוט את בנו. There's a lot of words here, right? It gives all of these details. He built the mizbeach, he went to the place, and then he put the trees, and then he tied Isaac up, and then he lifted up the ma'achela, the sword. Why all those words? So our rabbi explained to us that Abraham's own body was hesitating, even though he Vayashkem Avraham baboker, he forced himself to go quickly, early, because he didn't want to miss the mitzvah. His own body was giving him signals, what? That this wasn't what Hashem wanted. Why? Because he had such a purity of his limbs, that his limbs, through being reluctant to slaughter Isaac, through all these words that had to be said, that's what the rabbis learned, that basically there was an idea that his limbs were pure, and the limbs did not recognize that he misinterpreted, or this is not what Hashem wanted. So this is called Tarat Evarim, the purity of the limbs. From a Kabbalistic point of view, corresponds to a different one of the sfirot, right? And therefore, if we want to have a body that is domeh, that is botidbak, that is connected to God, our limbs have to be proper representations of their spiritual components in the Shamayim. Therefore, a person's limbs have to be holy, pure. Limbs, Limbs, right? Which means one's mouth should not be speaking things that are improper, because the mouth corresponds to the Malchut Peh Shabal Peh. Remember, the head has its own 10 sfirot, and then the head is also connected to Chokhmah Binah, and then there's a dot. But the mouth is Torah Shabal Peh. Where do we learn that? Petichat Eliyahu. Petichat Eliyahu. The Petichat Eliyahu says that what? Malchut Peh is the mouth, right? That's why it's called Torah Shebe'al Peh. Why? Look at the language of the Chachamim. In English, we say when somebody memorizes something, we say it's by heart. But that's not the Hebrew. What's the Hebrew? If we translate the Hebrew, what do we Torah Shebe'al Peh? What does that mean? It doesn't mean, in English we'll translate it as knowing it by heart, but that's not the exact translation. What's the exact translation? Torah that is by the mouth, correct. Meaning that there's no book in front of you, unlike Torah Shebichtav, where there's written Torah, and I'm reading what it says in the Torah. If the book is closed, now that's by the mouth, because there's no ktav, there's no writing. Why did the rabbis choose the term Be'al Peh, by mouth, rather than, as we say in English, which is not a holy language, by heart? Because mouth is Malchut Peh, Torah Shebe'al Peh. So therefore, we understand that the Lashon, we discussed this last week, that the Lashon of the Chachamim is the way it is, specifically because it's hinting to deeper concepts that if you just look at the superficial, you just pass it on right by. So continuing on, it says, Ubotidbak, Yesh inyan besod taharat evarav. There's an idea that a person has to have purity of limbs. She'efshar lidabek b'shechinah. That when a person has purity of limbs, they can attach themselves to the Shekhinah. What are the Rambams? Why is it that you can't attach yourself to the Shekhinah? Because it's Esh Ochila. How were Nadav and Avihu killed? Vatetze Esh milifnei Hashem. They were killed by Esh. Why? We said because they didn't have proper governance. They didn't have proper limitation. They went beyond where they were supposed to go. So the Esh came out and burned them from the inside, not from the outside. How do we know they were burned from the inside and not from the outside? They were told to pull them out by their clothes. No. If a human being gets burned and they have clothes on, the first thing that gets burned is the clothing. Right? So therefore, by the fact that they were pulled them out by their clothing, right? What does that mean? Their clothes weren't burned. So how is it possible that their body was burned and not their clothes? So rabbis tell us that what happened, the fire went into their nostrils and burned the connection between the neshama and the body, which means death. Incidentally, where do we learn the Bet Din Srefa? What is Srefa? The Abba Mitot Betin, Sekila, Serefa, Herek, Vahenek. What is Serefa? If you look at the Christians, you say to yourself, they put a stake, they put the person on the stake, and they light them up. That's because they're ignorant. That's because they're ignorant. They don't understand what Srefa is in the Torah. What is Srefa? They take lead, they melt lead, so it's a liquid. They force the person's mouth open, and they pour the molten lead, which means the burning is from the inside, not the outside. Where do we learn that from? The same way, the way that Nadav and Avihu were burned is the same way we do Srefa, but not with Esh, with hot lead. It's an instantaneous death.
Did they do it to anybody?
What's that?
Did anybody got that lit?
Ubat Kohen tikitechel liznot et avia hi mechalelet ba'esh tisaref. Bat Kohen. A bat kohen who goes and has relations with a man that she's not supposed to have relations with, right? What's her punishment? She's married, but she's a bat kohen. A typical married woman that has relations with a man, what's the punishment? Henek, strangulation. If she's bat kohen, srefa. What is the punishment for a witch? Srefa. Okay. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Again, it said any court that killed someone in 70 years was considered to be a tough court. Because in order, the standard of evidence to execute someone in a Jewish court was so high that it was almost impossible to meet the standard of evidence. First of all, it had to be eyewitness testimony. There's no such thing in a Jewish court of circumstantial evidence. That doesn't exist. Only witnesses. Why did Jewish court not need circumstantial evidence? Because if there's circumstances and there's no witnesses, the court doesn't have the ability to kill the person, but God's going to take care of business. Which means you're not off just because there's circumstantial evidence, okay? If there's no witnesses, that means the Jewish court has no way to execute the person because there have to be people to talk to. Al pi shnayim o shlosa edim yumat hamet. What does the Torah say? Through 2 or 3 witnesses is how we execute, which means no witnesses, there's no circumstantial evidence. But God takes care of that instead, okay? So coming back here, we understand that Esh, so the Shekhinah is Esh Ochelet. Yes, a consuming fire. How did Moshe Rabbeinu first come into contact with talking to God? Exactly. The difference there is it wasn't Esh Ochelet. It was an Esh that was not Ochelet, okay? But generally, fire is consuming. So watch what the Rekanati is going to say. She'efshali dabek b'Shekhinah af ki hi Esh Ochelah. A person can attach themselves to the Shekhinah even though it's a consuming fire. How? Ki haneshama haTeorah nikret ner Hashem. What is the neshama called? Ner Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's called the candle of God. So since technically the neshama of the person is Esh. Continuing. And in order to have fire, you have to have it light. Where is the fire of the neshama lit from? From the fire of the Shekhinah. Yes. Uba dvuka ve'aluya utshukata. And meaning what the neshama, what do we say about the neshama is tehorah. The neshama does not get affected by negative deeds. Nefesh and ruach, yes. Neshama, no. What do we say? What do we say? Elohai. Neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Why is the neshama tehorah? Because the neshama is always lit by the Shekhinah. And how does one purify metal? Fire. Okay? Okay. Now we have another insight as to why Nadav and Avihu were killed with fire. Because their neshamot were tehorot. Yeah? Even though they might have made a mistake with their body, their souls were tehorot. So therefore, what happened? The Esh of the Shekhinah reached out and grabbed the Esh of their neshama. Yes?
I heard the analogy of how like a flame looks when you have it lit. It looks like a droplet, like a sink.
Okay.
So it's like a ureta in a way.
It's a reverse droplet.
Right. Well, so it's like, you say the Shekhinah.
What does that remind us of? We've discussed this before. Very nice you bringing that up. I love it. What is Esh is a reverse droplet, right? If you think about a droplet of water, the thicker part is where? Down. What about in a fire? No, the thicker part's also up or down. Is it the same? Hold on a second. Let's think for a second. You're right. Okay, it looks the same. Very good. So, very nice. Chazak. Okay. The Katav Od Ba'arichut. And the Rekanati also wrote in more length in Parashat Vayechi. Kishahayu koshrim nafsham benefesh ha'elyona. When they would tie the nefesh with the nefesh ha'elyona. We'll see what he's talking about. Hayu advarim mitrabim mitbarachim umitgalim me'alehem me'afisat ha'machshava ki adam ha'potech bracha v'hi mitpashetet. I have no idea what he's talking about here. Kishayu koshrim nafsham benefesh. Oh, wait a minute. What do we say when a person passes away? Vayasef elamav. Parshat Vayechi is the death of Yaakov and the death of Yosef, right? When Yaakov dies, what does it say? It doesn't say Vayamot. By the way, by Yaakov Avinu, it doesn't say Vayamot. It says Vayasef elamav. What does that mean? Translate what that means. Translate word for word. Vayasef elamav. He was gathered to his nation. Right? So what is death as far as the Torah? What is the death of the righteous? What is the death? It's a gathering to his nation or her nation. What happens? Because the nefesh, the neshama, leaves and then is gathered where? Tzror HaChaim. What do we put on a grave? What do we put on a tombstone? Tiyeh nishmato tzura bitzror hachayim. There's a bundle of life. And we've discussed in this class what sphira corresponds to the bundle of life. When you see the word chayim, chai, there's two things you're going to think about. It's either going to be yesod or it's going to be or malchut or bina. So what is tzror hachayim? Bina. Okay? I think that's what he's referring to here. I hope it is. Okay? Bundle. Tzror is a bundle. The bundle of life. Okay. We'll stop there on the Ner, but that's just a little bit. We'll see if we can look it up a little bit more for next week. Okay? Coming back to Shaare Orah, now we're on page Rish Nun Tet. We're in the second Shar, which is the Shar of El Chai, which corresponds to the Yesod. Okay? So we are discussing on the top of the line here. Nimtzeta lamed. We found that you can learn Kia Shivua. Back to the Shivua. What is the Shivua? A swear. What word is connected to the Shivua? Shiva. Shiva, 7, right? Why? Because it's the same exact words in the same letters in Hebrew. He be'el chai. The shvuah is el chai. Where do we see that? Because many of the languages of swearing are with the word chai. When God says chai ani, what does that mean? He's swearing. It's lashon shvuah. And when he does that, that means whatever bad is coming there is not changeable. Generally, when God commands something, says something's going to happen that is bad, it doesn't have to happen because God is telling us about something bad that's going to happen. So we'll make teshuvah and we will change ourselves so the bad thing doesn't happen. But when God says chai ani, like he did by the Meraglim, we discussed this last week, it weakened the power of Moses' prayer. That's why he only used 7 of the 13 attributes of mercy, because he was weakened. It says his prayer was weakened like a woman vis-a-vis a man. I mean, compared to what people think, we understand men are generally stronger than women. You know, if you have women competing in bench pressing, they got no chance. I mean, they may be able to compete against me, but if you take the strongest man and the strongest woman, they got no chance, okay? No chance. Okay, so we see there's a strength of men. So Moses' prayer was weakened. Tashash kocho, his strength of prayer was weakened like nekeva. Therefore, he only had 7 of the 13 attributes. Why? Because God said chai ani. What does chai ani means? God is swearing. God doesn't have to swear. Everything he says is true. Here, no matter what happens, there's going to be punishment. I mean, that whatever he says is going to happen. There's nothing they can do to fix it at this point. Okay. So we see the language of chai is shivuah, swear. And we also understand the yesod, if you start counting from the binah, is the 7th sphira. Yes? If you start the counting from the binah, yesod is the 7th sphira. Okay? Good? All right. Okay. Shehus, okay, continue on. So it's the sort of the Shivi'i that we already discussed. Shu Soda Shabbat. Shabbat is also Shivi'i. Shiv'ah. Yes? Shu Sod Hayet Nefesh. What's Hayet Nefesh? The sustaining force of life. How do we understand that? The concept of Yosef Mokir Shabbat, meaning what? All of the life, all of the bracha that comes to us comes because of the Shabbat. It's either the Shabbat that was previous or the Shabbat that's coming. So all of the bracha that we have today is from Shabbat yesterday. All the bracha we're going to have tomorrow is from Shabbat yesterday. All the bracha we're going to have on Tuesday is from Shabbat yesterday. Once you get to Wednesday, which in Yiddish is called mitvach, middle of the week. Now what happens? Why is Wednesday? Because Wednesday is bringing from the Shabbat that is coming. It's no longer attached to the previous Shabbat. It's attached to the Shabbat that's coming. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we have the 6 days that are all attached, all connected to the Shabbat. What does that remind us of? Back to the menorah. Meaning, yeah. Very good. The Shiv'ah is the middle one, and all of the candles, what are they doing? They are facing the middle one. That's why it says El Penei HaMenorah, Ya'iru Nerotea. What is El Penei HaMenorah? The Penei HaMenorah is the center. That is the Shiv'ah. That is representing the Shabbat. And all of the other candles, Chesed, Givurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are all pointing to the Shabbat. Okay. Continuing on. Shehu Sod Shabbat Vayinafash. Now let's do a little Hebrew now. What's the difference between the word Shabbat and Shabbat? All right, I'll pronounce it not like the Syrians do. I'll pronounce it like many Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim. What is the difference between the word Shabbat and Shavat? Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'eretz ve'yom haShabbat Shavat vayinafash. It's not a bet, does not have a dagesh inside. It doesn't say Shabbat vayinafash. It says Shavat vayinafash. What's the difference? When there's a dot inside the bet, it's a noun. It means the day of Shabbat. When it's no dot inside the bet, it's the verb. What is the verb? To rest. Lishbot. To rest from creative work. That's why when the Rambam is doing his compilation in Sefer Zmanim of the laws of the days, of the times of the year, what does he start with? Shabbat. And what does he call it? He called it Shvita. Because the mitzvah, the positive commandment on Shabbat is to rest from creative work. There's a lo ta'aseh, not to perform creative work. But there's a mitzvah aseh, to rest from creative work. And after he discusses the Shabbat, what is the next halakha he discusses in the Zmanim? So he's going to move from Shabbat to the holidays. Unlike the Torah, which starts off and says, so when the Torah is going through the holidays, it mentions the Moadim, the special days, starts with Shabbat, which is Mikra Kodesh, and then it goes to Pesach, then it talks about the Omer, then it goes to, we just read this a couple of weeks ago, then it goes to Shavuot, then it goes to Rosh Hashanah, then it goes to Yom Kippur, and then it goes to Sukkot. Why is the Torah going in that order? It's going in order. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim. We start counting the year from Nisan. What is the first thing we come into contact with Nisan? Well, the first thing we're going to see is Shabbat. Okay? Shabbat is first. because Nisan's the 14th. That means it's at least 1 or 2 Shabbat that happened before. So first is Shabbat, right? Then is Pesach, and going in the order. When the Rambam made his compilation, he didn't follow the order of the Torah, the chronology. He followed a different order. What did he follow? First, he discusses Shabbat. Next thing he discusses is Shevitat Asor. What is Shevitat Asor? The resting on the 10th. What day is that? What day is the resting on the 10th?
The 10th was when they got the sheep.
No. Shevitat Asor. What is the resting on the 10th?
Oh, Kippur.
Kippur! Kippur, yes? We good? Is that what you? That's not what you said, right? I
I'm still in Nisan.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll go because the Rambam is not going in the order of the Torah. The Rambam is going in a different order, and we'll see what order he goes in. So first he discusses Shabbat. Then he discusses Kippur. Then he discusses Yom Tov, Shevitat Yom Tov. Then he discusses Hol HaMoed. Why is he going in that order?
Well, because they have similar laws, so it makes it logical. Because Yom Kippur is similar to Shabbat, except
Because Kippur is called Shabbat, Shabbaton. Number one. Number two, the Rambam is going in order of the gravity of doing creative work. Since all of these holidays, what is the theme that they all have? Resting from creative work. Shabbat, Kippur, Yom Tov, and Hol HaMoed. They all have aspects of resting from creative work in different degrees. Which is the most severe as far as the punishment is concerned? Shabbat. A person who does melacha on Shabbat is hayav sekila, stoning, and not with cannabis. Okay? What if a person does melacha on Kippur? They're not punished by the Bet Din. What do they get? Karet, because the Torah says v'nichreta hanefesh hayi. So it's still a capital offense. Yes, that's why Kippur is Shabbat Shabbaton. Doing melacha on Kippur has the same gravity because it's a capital offense, but it's not mitat Bet Din. What is the punishment for doing melacha on Yom Tov that is not sanctioned by the rabbis? You're watering your garden on Yom Tov. That's not one of the things the rabbis permitted for Ochel Nefesh, right? So if a person is watering their garden on Yom Tov, what's the punishment from the Bet Din? Lashes. Okay? And then Hol HaMoed is less because there's a machloket amongst the Rishonim where they're doing melacha on Hol HaMoed is deoraita adrabanan. That's machloket between the Rishonim. Okay? I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just saying it's machloket. So we see from here what? And I think the Rambam doesn't hold this deoraita. Okay? What do we see from here? That the Rambam is going in order of the Shevita. The most significant resting from creative work is Shabbat. After that is Kippur. After that is Yom Tov. After that is Hol HaMoed. That is the thought when I say that the greatest sefer ever written of halacha that contains all the halachot of the Torah is the Yad HaChazakah. I'm sorry. There is no one that is better. The order is, there's thought in the order. There are brisker rabbis. There's a whole Chachmei Brisk. And what they do is they just, in Yiddish, the word is to teach. What is to teach? It's to delve into, yes? To teach. What do they teach? They teach the order and the language of the Rambam. That's the whole Torah. They built Torah on why the Rambam uses this word here and uses this word here. And you can do that with the Rambam. You can't do that with other books. It's not the same. Okay? Coming back. So I don't know how we got to that topic, but that's okay. We're here to learn. So we see over here, Shavat vayinafash. What does that mean? Ubayom HaShevi'i, Shavat vayinafash. What does that mean? And on 7th day, he rested from creative work. That's what it means. It's called the Shabbat because God was Shovet. We understand? Okay. And because the Shavua is with the name El Chai, Omer ba'inyan, it says, Vayarem yamino smolo el hashamayim vayishava b'chei ha'olam. In Daniel, when Daniel is given the prophecy, the one of two people in the entire Tanakh that were given the prophecy of when the Mashiach is coming. One of them is Daniel. Who's the other one? The exact date.
Luria.
No, he's not in the Tanakh. Who in the Tanakh? We have Daniel.
Eliyahu.
No,
Moshe Rabbeinu,
no,
Avraham Avinu,
no,
Yitzchak,
no.
Yaakov.
Yaakov. Where do we see Yaakov? He'asfu ve'agid alachem et shikra etchem be'achrit hayamim. Yaakov Avinu was given the prophecy of when the Mashiach is coming. That's called Aharit Hayamim. And then if you look afterwards, what happens? He doesn't say anything about Aharit Hayamim. So what does Rashi? So what does Rashi say? He received it. What did Rashi say? Rashi says he's worried what's going to happen. He's worried that one of his sons was Rasha, which means it left him. Which means the Shekhinah left him when he was about to reveal to his sons that when the Mashiach is going to come, the Shekhinah left him. Okay? So right away, Yaakov Avinu says to himself, maybe one of my sons is Rasha. Yes? The Gemara discusses this. And when the sons saw that Yaakov stopped talking, Father just said, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in the end of days. And then he stops talking. They sense the fact that what? He was worried, just like Abraham had Rasha, just like Yitzchak had Rasha. He was worried that maybe somewhere in the out of Yaakov, one of the sons is Pasul. So what did they say? Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Why does it say Shema Yisrael? Because the boys, the sons, were talking to their father. Because their father was addressing them as Yisrael. So they said, Shema Yisrael. No, Dad. No. We are all believing in one God. And what was Yaakov Avinu's response? Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Vayed. That was Yaakov Avinu's response. But, so then Rashi says he talked about other things after that. The Ramban says no. Contained within the brachot of all of the sons is the secret for Acharit Hayamim. But he hid it. He didn't want it to become clear for everybody to see. Daniel was told this is when the Mashiach is coming, but by God. But then he was told to hide it. Okay, so it's a zechut to know something even if you can't tell anybody about it. Perspective. God comes to you and gives you a gift of information, and he tells you cannot share. Why is it torture?
You can't share with nobody else.
Okay, then you're not understanding the right perspective. What is the most important thing for a human being on the planet? I'm going to ask you that question. I asked him. What are you going to say? Life. Life in what? Life in Avodah Zarah? That's important? What do you mean Jewish life?
I mean, what's the most important thing for me is prayers and learning and,
Excellent. Very good. The most important thing for a Jew, everything you just said is for one goal. What's the underlying goal behind prayer and learning and mitzvahs? What's the goal? To connect to Hashem. To have a relationship with Hashem. To be connected to God. To be close to God. Right? Now, if God comes and tells me a secret, and he says, I don't want you to tell anybody else.
I would tell them, don't tell them.
No. I would say, thank you for trusting me, because why is he not telling anybody else? Because no one else is trustworthy on the secret.
my secret.
You're not catching it.
Nobody will ever hear it from me.
Well,
I'd rather
then,
not know about it.
okay, so
you cannot blame me saying, hey.
okay, very good. So prophets have a very, very important distinction between prophets and regular people. What's the important difference between prophets and regular people? Okay, if a regular person shoots off their mouth a little too much, okay, they can get punished from the Shemaim if it's Lashon Hara, other things like that. But there are going to be social implications for shooting off your mouth. Yes? Okay, now, a prophet, if he shoots off his mouth above what God asks, you know what happens to him? He dies. It's a very dangerous position. So you're the kind of person that would say, you know what? I want to be a prophet. Good. Me, I'd be the first person in line. Why? To be able to talk to God, and you talk to God every day. We just talked to God a half an hour ago. But what's the difference between you and me and a prophet? Ready for this? God talks back. To be able to imagine you are married. Okay, here's the example. When you're married, I shouldn't say this, but there's no ladies here. When you're married, it's a very good eitzah to let the wife do 80% of the talking and you do 20%. It says, Al tarbeh sicha im ha'isha. Do not have lots of conversations with the woman. What woman? Your woman. Kal vachomer, someone else's woman. Yes? Okay, we get that. That's definitely, that should be like 0%. Okay? Okay. But your own wife, it says you should not have lots of conversation. Meaning what? The way I look at it, how do I understand that nowadays? What are you going to? Meaning, you do a lot of listening and do talking every now and then. That works. As long as you're focused and attentive, right? And responding every now and then for every 10 or 15 words they say, you say yes, one word, or yeah, throw it. This is called, if you're doing most of the talking, I mean, you might be able to every now and then get away with it because you got some trouble and things like that. But if that's how it's always going on, it's not going to work. You want it to be most of the listening and you let them do the most of the talking. And that's how the relationship works, right? Well, right now, we are in a relationship with God and we're the woman. We're doing all the talking. God is just listening. Wouldn't it be nice if every now and then God said, I heard what you said. Thank you very much. Let me give you some new information. Wow. Who wouldn't want to have that? I would be the first in line if it was being given out.
Well, Noah talked with God. He even walked with God.
It didn't help him too much, did it?
Yeah, but look, how many people, in other words, Abraham Avinu didn't do what Noah did. Noah, they said that Hashem walked with Noah and he spoke to Noah.
Then you didn't read the pasuk properly.
He didn't come in a dream.
I'm sorry. By Noah, it's all the prophets came in a dream. All of the prophets
even Noah?
Only Moses didn't come in a dream. Every other prophet, it was always in a dream. That is clear, okay? But Noah had a deficit. What was his deficit? We discussed it yesterday. It says, Ish tzadik tamim haya bedorotav et ha'elohim hitalech Noach. Noah did whatever God said. He followed after God. Amazing. Wow. Holy moly. A tzaddik. Abraham was not a tzaddik. He was a level higher. What was Abraham Avinu? Chassid. Why? When he's about to have a Brit Milah, what does God say? Hitalech lefanai ve'yetamim. God is saying, go before me. Which is better? To go follow God or to go before God? Before. Which means I'm anticipating what the right thing to do is, and I'm doing it even before I'm being asked. That's Avraham. That's called chesed. That's called loving kindness. That's called above and beyond what we say in this class, lifnim mishurat hadin, which is what sfira is lifnim mishurat hadin. We discussed this a couple of times, a little chazara. What sfira is before the line of judgment? Which lens? No. Yes. Chesed is not in the line of judgment. Chesed is in the line of loving kindness. In the left side, on the line of Din, the line of Din begins with Givurah. What is above? What is Lifnim right before the line of Din? Bina. Sfirot we discussed are lenses. When your person has a sun, bright sun, okay, different lenses, okay? The only thing that changes the lens is what's filtering the light. The light is the same that's on the back. The source of light doesn't change. The only thing that's different is how the sphira is transmitting the light to the next level. Good. Labriut. All right, so we're a little off the topic over here, but that's okay. We're a little chazara, a little review. Okay, continuing on. So we see over here, what does it say? Vayarem yemino usmolo el hashamayim vayishava b'chei ha'olam. Who did this? Michael. Michael, the Sar Sava Hagadol, is the one who came to Daniel and gave him the prophecy of when the Mashiach is coming. With all due respect to Muhammad, who supposedly, according to their tradition, was speaking with Jibril, Daniel was speaking with the angel that's above Gabriel. Who's above Gabriel? Michael. And unlike Muhammad, according to their tradition, I once sent this to a Muslim. We were talking, I forgot what it was. Anyway, and I said, I just have a question. Can I ask you a question? I said, in the Quran, if you hold that Muhammad, who's discussed in the Quran, which is another question, we understand that according to your tradition, Muhammad received all of his prophecies through Gabriel. Yes, that's your tradition. Yes, but the most prominent figure in the Quran, the one that is mentioned more than any other human being on the planet, is who? Which personality in the Quran is mentioned more than any other personality? Musa. Moses. Isa is Jesus. He's mentioned a little bit more than Muhammad. But the one that's mentioned the most is Musa. And in the Quran, who communicated with Musa? God communicated with Musa. So I asked this Muslim, I have a question for you. You say that Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. You say Muhammad is the best prophet. Let me ask you a question. Which is the better prophet? Someone talking to an angel or someone talking directly to God? That was 15 years ago. I still haven't got a response for that one.
He never talked to you, but
I said, please go ask your imam, please go to your sheikh, whoever it is, and say, this Jewish doctor asked the question, can you give me an answer? You know what? No response, halachically, is a response. Shtika kodaya dameh, which means if I ask a question and they don't have an answer, you know what that means? They don't have an answer. Because if they had an answer, he would have called me the next day. I spoke to my imam, he told me this. The next thing he probably said is, don't talk to these Jews. They're the devils, like the Christians say about us. We're devils. So what happens? Oh, they're devils. Okay, they just want to steal my soul. We can't talk religion with them. Doesn't work so well nowadays with YouTube.
they call him Musa.
Musa. That's Arabic for Moses. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, the Arabic is better than the English. Moses. What's Moses? Musa, Moshe. Fits. Same word, same phonetics, just in Arabic. Okay. So we see, continue on. So Daniel, what happened? Michael comes to reveal to Daniel when the Mashiach is going to come. In chapter 12 of Daniel, one of only two people in human history that was revealed to them what the date of the arrival of the Messiah. Who revealed it to him? Michael. And what is Vayarem Yemino the Usmolo El Hashamay Shaba B'chei Olam? which means, if I'm not mistaken, Michael raised his hand in swearing. What is Lechei Olam? That's a Shivuah. We discussed this already, that the language of Chai Olam, what is that? That's called a Shivuah, a swear. That we learn in Masechet Nedarim and Masechet Shavuot. Halo tireh hashivuah shi b'chai haolam. We see in Daniel, there's a connection between the Shivuah, the swear, and the word Chai Olam. Shehu El Chai. What is Chai Olam? Everlasting life. What is El? Everlasting strength. Same thing. Ubishar mekomot, in other places, Chai Yud Kei Vav Kei, it says. Asher amadti lefanav. That's in Melachim, chapter 17, verse number 1. Chai Adonai v'chen nafshecha im ezveka. That's in Melachim Bet, chapter 2, verse number 2. Hen nafshecha Adoni, Shmuel Aleph, chapter 1, verse number 26. What are we learning from here? What is the goal of this book? First and foremost, to teach you the names of God and to teach you how these names of God appear in the Tanakh and to give you a deeper understanding of why that name was chosen as opposed to another name. Now, who's more of an expert on the names of God? A rabbi or a prophet? Prophet! So what's this book teaching us? Yes. That's why anybody who says, yeah, I don't study Kabbalah, I don't want to study Shaare Orah, that's another way of saying, when the Mashiach comes, I'm not interested in prophecy. Don't be that person. If God gives us the zechut of prophecy again, and he wants to bestow prophecy on you, you should say, thank you, please. I'd love to have some. And prophets didn't have easy jobs. So in the good old days, Jeremiah didn't want to be a prophet because he knew he was going to speak to the people and they would give him a hard time. Okay? But Baruch Hashem, when the Mashiach comes, there's no hard time. If you don't listen to the prophet, what happens? You die. Wow, there you go. There's no pit that they're going to throw you in. Nothing like that. If the Gentiles don't listen to the prophet, they die. Yes, that's not going to happen at the time of the Mashiach.
They say a lot of prophets were Quran too.
Okay, I think there was probably there. It says there were as many prophets as there were people who left Egypt. 600,000, and not all of them are men, by the way. Okay, about 48 prophets that were men, and but there were 600,000. I think it's 2 times Yotzei, 1.2 million. I think that's what the Talmud says. How many prophets there were? Prophecy. The only thing is, the only prophets that wrote things down are ones that had messages for all time. Prophets that didn't have message for all time, they were not allowed to write their words down. They had messages that were only for the time they lived. So therefore, it didn't need to be written down because it's not forever. Let's say a person is misbehaving. Prophet gets a prophecy. Go talk to that person. He's speaking a lot of Lashon Hara. He's about to get leprosy in his house. Go talk to him because God doesn't want to put leprosy in his house. So the prophet goes, talks to the guy and says, listen, God came to me last night and said, you're speaking Lamed Hey. Stop it or it's going to get worse for you. What does that person do? One of 2 things. They either stop speaking Lashon Hara or they get leprosy. That prophecy doesn't have to be written down for all the history. Why? Because that's individual for that person. Same thing if a prophet's going to a specific community. Let's say a certain community has a fault. And God says, I want you to go to that community and tell them what their fault is. But it's not a message for all time. That prophecy is not going to be written in the Tanakh. Because Yonah has a message for all time. Yonah has a message for all time. Once again, Yonah has a message for all time. And that's why when you study the Tanakh, all time. Yonah's prophecy was not just for Nineveh. There is something to be learned from Yonah's prophecy that is forever. How do I prove that to you? How do I prove that to you? Or how can you prove it to me? When do we read Yonah? Oh, well, I guess it has to have a message for all time because we read it on Kippur as the Haftarah, Mincha. So therefore, there's got to be a message for me today. Otherwise, why am I reading the book of Jonah? And why do people in a Sephardic shul spend $10,000 or $20,000 to get Maftir Yonah? You want a discount? Go to the Ashkenaz. It's about $1.80. Go to a Syrian shul. Oh, there was once a situation. There was a guy, and I wanted him to give more money to the yeshiva. I was like the president of the yeshiva at that point, a little small yeshiva that was in where we lived. And I knew this guy always bought Maftir Yonah on the holidays because his father used to buy it and his father passed away. So he'd always buy it. Didn't make a difference how much it was. He would always buy it. So I went to knock on his door to get money for the yeshiva, and he was giving me some small pittance of money. I said, listen, let me tell you something. This is how it's going to work. You're either going to give the money to the yeshiva or you're going to give the money to the synagogue. Because I'm going to bid against you for Maftir Yonah. I'm going to take you up to $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000. If you want to get Maftir Yonah like you usually do for about $3,000 or $4,000, because it was a small shul, then here's what you're going to do. You're going to do this. I won't bid against you, okay? And you're going to give the $5,000 to the yeshiva. I extorted him. And so what did he do? He gave $5,000 to the yeshiva. And then, so what happened was that year, I felt bad because in my calculation with God, I was going to buy Maftir Yonah. But I always bid against him a little bit, but never strong because, but that time, so now I said to myself, in the scheme of things in Shamayim, Grossman has to have Maftir Yonah someplace. So what did I do? It was an Ashkenaz shul. I went to one of the people in the Ashkenaz shul. I said, please get me Maftir Yonah. They said to me, how much do you want to spend? I said, I want Maftir Yonah. No matter what it costs, you're going to buy it for me. Okay? I knew it wasn't going to be anything more than $1.80. Guess what? That's what it was, $1.80. So I got Maftir Yonah with Ashkenazim that year. Again, nothing wrong with that. Ashkenazim have a different way to collect money for their shuls on the holidays. That's okay. They got membership and all the kind of stuff. However that works, everybody's got to collect. The Sephardic shul, the membership is low, but the donations are high. It's a different way of handling it. They're both okay. But you know what? I capitalized on that one. And the Ashkenaz shul was very happy. Oh my God, someone spent $180 for Maftir Yonah. God, just come next door. 180. The bidding starts at 501 or 180. Anyway, so we see from here that Yonah has a message for all time. That's why it's in the Tanakh.
I did hear somewhere that he was he might be potentially the first case of someone being resurrected.
Who?
Jonah?
You heard that?
I just somewhere online.
That sounds like very New Testament.
Yeah, it could have.
Okay, because the New Testament claims that Jesus said he's going to be in the ground for 3 nights and 3 days, just like Yonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights. What's the problem with that? Being in the belly of the whale has nothing to do with resurrection, although I'll correct that in 1 second. Okay? Being in the belly of the whale, he was swallowed up by the whale. Or it wasn't a whale, it was a fish. It doesn't say whale. Let's be clear about that. What does it say in Yonah? Dag. Dag. Okay? It doesn't say whale. Jonah and the whale. It's nice. It doesn't say whale. It says dag. Fish. We know what kind of fish it was. Some kind of fish. Okay? What's that? Maybe it doesn't say Leviathan. Okay? So he was there for 3 days and 3 nights. Right? But that's great because when you look at the Gospels and you look at the 4 Gospels, there are a few things that they don't agree on at all. Like there are certain things like 2 will agree and 2 will disagree. Not exact. In the Gospels, they all disagree on this topic. How long he was in the ground, how long he was dead for. And none of them are correct. Why? Because 3 days and 3 nights, when did he get crucified? He got crucified on Friday. He was buried on Friday. So we got in the ground Friday night, Saturday night. And then there's a machloket in the Gospels of when he woke up. Some say he woke up. They went to the tombstone before sunrise. Others said they went before dawn. Others said they went early in the day. Either way, it's not 3 days and 3 nights. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Friday night, where's Sunday night? None of them say that they went Sunday night. Well, then there's no 3 days and 3 nights. Nafal hadrasha, as we say in the vernacular. Anyway, if you bring him in Mishnah Barash, the 6th chelek, I'll show you something unbelievable that Chafetz Chaim says about Yonah. Just to answer your question of what does Yonah have anything to do? It's just a prophecy for them and not for us. You have chelek 6? There's a whole Mishnah Barash someplace over there. There's a whole big one with all the chalakim. Ay, 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 ay. There's one book with all of them, unless someone borrowed it. How many Sfaradim does it take to find the Mishnah Berurah? That's the question. It's like how many polas does it take to screw a light bulb? There you go. That one's not Chelek Vav over there, that Mishnah Berurah? Over to the right. You got it? Vav? Yo, Zachita. No, that's not Mishnah Berurah. That's Mishnah. Come on, there's got a Mishnah Berurah over there someplace. Look in that shelf. Go up one shelf. That black book on the second shelf from the top. No. All right. Go up one shelf. Trachtenberg, up one shelf. There, to the right. What's that one right there? What's that one right there? Oh, look at that. I checked the commissary yesterday. That's why I knew where it was. Okay. When we look in the laws of Yom Kippur, in the Mishnah Berurah, what does it say? He asks a question. What's his question? The laws of Mincha on
Erev.
Kippur.
Kippur itself or Erev?
Kippur. Okay. What does he say? Limincha, it says in the Shulchan. You're not staying for this? This is for you. This is for you. Just stay and get your coffee 1 second. Lemincha, it says, Omer Ashrei u'Ba'al Tzion. Shulchan Aruch says, we say Ashrei and Ba'al Tzion. Ve'en omrim bani tefilati. Okay, that's what we say. V'im chal bliyot b'Shabbat. If it fell on Shabbat, okay? And what does he say continuing on? 1 second. Umotzi'in Sefer Torah. We take out a Sefer Torah. The Korin Shlosha beParashat Arayot, which we discussed yesterday. We read, 3 people read in the Parashat of the Arayot, which is Acharemot, the end part of Arayot that we read yesterday. Ad Sof HaParasha, until the end of the Parasha. The Shlishi, and the third guy, Maftir Beyonah, reads the Maftir, and the Maftir is all of Sefer Yonah, 4 chapters, right? Umisayem miel kamocha umbarech lefanea v'acharea, and he makes a bracha before and after. Vim hal b'Shabbat maskir bashel Shabbat chotem shel Shabbat. Okay, now let's see what the Chafetz Chaim writes on the bottom here. V'kavanatam. This is going to be connected to something you said, but not exactly. The Kavanatam. Why did the rabbis institute that we should be reading Yonah on Kippur?
Teshuvah.
That seems like a very logical answer. Teshuvah. But Yonah is Teshuvah of Goyim. Ninveh is Goyim. Oh, which is a big problem, because as much as the Christians like to say 3 days and 3 nights, I'll be in the belly of the whale, I'll be in the ground, there's no other portion of Yonah that is brought at all in the Christian Bible. No other aspect of the Yonah, other than the 3 days and 3 nights swallowed in the belly of the whale, is brought up in the Christian Bible. Why not? Because it goes against their entire theology. Here's the answer.
Did you choose through another person?
They say that the only way to get atonement is through blood sacrifice. If there's no blood, there's no atonement. That's Paul's entire religion is built on that. And then they do a copy of the paganism where they have the dead God, that their shedding of the blood of that God is what brings atonement, which means he makes an amalgam between paganism, mythical religions, and Judaism. That's Christianity. Yonah sells us something unbelievable. The people of Nineveh, anywhere in the book of Jonah, does it say they made a sacrifice? No. Their tshuva was made through speech, ripping their clothing, sitting on the ground. That's how their tshuva was done, which goes completely against Christian theology. And here's the wonderful thing. They can say, you know what? The blood sacrifices, that's for us now because we had no path to repentance as Gentiles before Jesus. Well, Jonah is Gentiles. There's a path to repentance. And that's why the New Testament doesn't talk about Yonah except for the 3 days and 3 nights, because that fits with the stupidity of him being in the ground for 3 days, which he wasn't. The whole religion is just myth and lies. It's just amazing. But coming back here.
Why would God want to do that? What did the Lamb do? They didn't take the Torah, we did.
So why are we bringing Yonah? Because Yonah is a prosecution for the Jewish people.
What?
Yonah is a prosecution for the Jewish people. Why didn't Yonah want to go to Nineveh? Was he actually stupid enough to think, chas v'shalom, that he could run away from God? Please tell me how we understand this prophet. Why didn't he want to go to Nineveh?
They were not Jewish.
He didn't want to become a prophet. He said a lot of prophets don't want to become
No. Why didn't he want to go to Nineveh? Because they weren't Jewish? No.
He didn't think they would.
Because he thought that they were not listening to him.
That's what he writes. He was afraid they wouldn't listen, but really, that's not what he was afraid of.
They would kill him.
He was afraid that they would make tshuva. So we clearly see that Yonah did not want the people of Nineveh to make teshuvah. So he knew that if he goes there and tells them, I'm speaking in the word of God, what's going to happen? They're going to repent and make teshuvah. So he runs away because he doesn't want to deliver the message, because he doesn't want to make teshuvah. He wants them to get punished. Why? What country did Nineveh was the capital of?
Babel.
Ashur.
Assyria.
This is before the expulsion of the 10 tribes by Sancheriv. Yonah did not want to go and rescue the people of Nineveh, so the 10 tribes wouldn't have been sent out into exile. Which means he knew that this nation in the future was going to be the ones, not Nebuchadnezzar, that's Bavel. He knew that Sancheriv, or he knew that there was going to be a person, because it was right before that, who was going to go and send the 10 tribes into exile. It almost destroyed Jerusalem if it wasn't for Chizkiyahu. So because of that, he ran away. Because why? He didn't want them to be saved. God said, I'm so sorry. It's my world, not yours. You're going. And he went. And guess what happened? They didn't die. So what Yonah didn't want to happen, happened, which means he wanted them to die. They didn't die. And then later on, not too long afterwards, Sancheriv comes up and he exiles the 10 tribes and destroys most of Yehudah and Shomron, with the exception of Jerusalem and a few other cities. That's why Yonah didn't want to go. But there's another reason, because this was already towards the end of the Israel Commonwealth, and maybe 150 years before the destruction of the temple, right? And there'd already been enough prophets in the Jewish people to recognize that what was happening with prophecy, people weren't listening. So what happens? Delivering a message where the people are not going to listen It's not fun because then you only pay social and political ramifications, but there's no joy. As far as God is concerned, that's not your decision. You're a prophet. You go tell them what I tell them to tell them, no matter what happens. Right? That's the tough thing about a prophet in the olden days, right? Okay. So so at the end, prophecy disappeared. Why did prophecy disappear?
No Bet HaMikdash.
There was still prophecy after the temple. Daniel was a prophet outside the land of Israel in Bavel, and still receiving prophecy, by the way, because he started his prophetic career in Israel. No prophetic career starts outside the land of Israel, but once there's a prophet already, they can be getting prophecy outside the land of Israel. Yechezkel, when he sees the Merkavah, one of the greatest prophecies of Yechezkel, where is he? Babylon, al Nehar Kavar. So we understand that the prophets, once they're a prophet, even if they're in the exile, receive prophecy. But there's no new prophets. Now they came back to the temple, the second temple, when it was built. Why didn't prophecy come back? Because the Talmud says in Masechet Megillah something incredible. God says, I sent 48 prophets and 7 prophetesses whose words were written down for all of posterity. And none of those prophets were able to make an impact on the Jewish people to the point where I had to exile them and destroy the temple. I sent one Rasha. His name was Haman. And he was able to get the Jewish people to make teshuvah. So the Jewish people have already told me what they need. They don't need prophets. They need Rishaim. They need a Hitler, Shem Hashem Yerkav. They need a Tucker Carlson, Shem Hashem Yerkav. They need these people because these people get them to repent. And until we send God a different message, that's Jewish history for the next 2,500 years. Oy vey. Oy vey. So they don't need prophets. They don't listen. All right, let's see what the Chafetz Chaim says is why we read Maftir Yonah. You would think it's because it's a tshuva thing. That's not what he says. Ready for this? Ki ha'adam choshev kama pe'amim. A person's going to think a couple of times. Le'yaesh et atzmo. He becomes depressed. He becomes... Now, why Mincha Kippur is the person becoming... We just read about some of the great sins in the Bible. Sleeping with your mother, sleeping with another man's wife, all these tremendous, and all of them carry what type of punishment? Death. And what happens? And all a person has to do is do it once. One time to have an illicit, improper relationship, just one sexual relationship with one person, one time. What's the punishment? Death. And what happened? This person maybe did it more than once. Did it 10 times, did it 100 times, did it a couple of years worth of it until they realized that this was not the way of God. And he says to himself, how can I repent? It's so bad. I stink so bad. There's no way God is going to forgive me. Can that happen? Human psyche? Absolutely. That's the depression, because it's already almost finished with Yom Kippur. There's only the Mincha Tefillah and Ne'ilah left, and he's still not feeling it, which means the Chazan is not so good. Maybe there's a lot of talking, got distracted. He's not feeling the repentance. He doesn't feel like he's achieved the Kisei HaKavod. He has not reached the Binah. He has not gotten to the level of Teshuvah yet. And he knows he's got all this bad stuff. Those arayot, he's got some of them. He gets depressed. That's what the Chafetz Chaim, this is who the Chafetz Chaim is talking to. He gets depressed. She'en yachol letaken b'shum ofen. There's no way for me to fix all of the bad that I did. Thou can. So now what happens? Okay. Person's worthy of death penalty. Yes? How many times can God kill you? All right. If I can't repent, and if I'm going to get punished with a death penalty because I did it once, what does that mean? Let me live it up. I'll continue chas v'shalom to sin. I'll continue to make all these mistakes, but God can only kill me once. What does the Chafetz Chaim say? Look at this beautiful. And if God commands that he's going to die, he'll die. Chafetz Chaim says, but this is a mistake. This is a mistake. What's the mistake? Shesof davar yiyeh. From Yonah we learn, you cannot outsmart God. Yonah tried, didn't work out so well for him. You cannot outsmart God. Kol ma she'akadosh baruch hu rotzeh minafsho, whatever God has desired for this person to fix is going to get fixed. Which means not fixing it is not an option. You can either do it the easy way or you can do it the hard way. But any way you go, it's got to be fixed. He's going to have, what does he say? V'avo od pam. This is the posek hador for the Ashkenazim in the previous generation. In the Mishnah Brura, what does it say? He's going to come again. What's that called? Reincarnation. He's going to come alive again. He's right. Upa'amayim. Once, twice, three times. He's going to come back in a Gilgul. La'olam hazeh, to this world. And he's going to have to fix it. So if he doesn't fix it this time around, he's going to come back alive again and have to fix it then. And how do you fix it? How do you fix it? How do you fix it? First of all, maybe when the person comes back alive again, he's not going to have that same sin. And what happens? While the 4 capital punishments are no longer active, which means the Bet Din cannot do capital punishment anymore. If it could, we'd be a very different community. Imagine if there's capital punishment. No one would be driving to shul on Shabbat. Even in a Tesla. Okay? No one would be driving to shul. Because what would happen? Someone would see him drive up. Excuse me. Hello. Witnesses in mourning. Go to Bet Din. Bad news. Skila. All the Boca Raton, all the Jews in Boca Raton would become from. Either that or Florida's going to be challenging because you don't have any cliffs, so you have to find a place you can push them off for stoning. But now there's no Bet Din. The Bet Din cannot enforce capital offenses. But the Talmud says something that people don't realize. Capital offenses are still here.
They're just in abeyance?
How does that work? A person falls out of a 4th floor window and dies. That's called sikila. A person, chas v'shalom, gets caught in a fire and gets burned. What's that called? Srefa. A person gets stuck in the water and drowns. What's that called? Henek. A person is in a car accident and gets decapitated. What's that called? Hereg. Which means the 4 mitot of Bet Din are still here. They're just not done by the Bet Din. They're done by life circumstances. Now, we don't look at anybody and say, oh my God, he fell out of the window. That means he's guilty of skila. In this life. But we don't know. So a person is going to come back and experience mitat Bet Din over and over again. That's what the Chafetz Chaim is saying. They've skipped this part. So what does he say? Save yourself the trouble. Don't get depressed. Roll up your sleeves. You have 2 more tefillot, mincha, ne'ilah. Get to work. Don't be lazy. That's what the Chafetz is saying. And where do we learn this from? Yonah. Why? Because Yonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, the belly of the fish. And what does this mean? This is a remez, he says, to Gilgul, to resurrection, not resurrection, to reincarnation. That's where the Christians messed up. It's a remez, it's a hint to reincarnation. 3 days and 3 nights, what does that mean? 3 lives.
They say he was resurrected, but didn't they say a lot of rabbis every night they came home and they killed it to the wife?
Not a lot of rabbis.
What?
Only one. Rav Yosef, who was that? I'm blanking on it.
Friday night he came back.
For 18 years, he made kiddush for his wife for 18 years.
I mean, after he died 18 years, he came back.
Okay. Let's talk a little tachlis over here, since we're a Kabbalah class over here, so we can talk about things that are, okay. With all due respect to the Christians, they got many problems. We just brought up a few of them. Okay, so please don't. Okay, don't push. Okay. If one reads the book called Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Just, written by what is arguably one of the greatest rabbis of the past 400 years, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Zichron Tzadik Livracha. Why did the Ramchal write the Mesilat Yesharim? For Musar? Does he write in the book, I wrote this book for Musar? By the way, I'm asking, the answer is no. What was his goal in writing the book? Mesilat Yesharim is a book that's a handbook for rising up spiritually, from tzaddik to chassid to kadosh. And if a person follows the path, and it's not easy because, trust me, read the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. Once a person gets to the 9th level, there are 10 levels. Once a person gets to the 9th level, that's the level of kedusha, the highest level. Yes? What's the next level after? Ruach HaKodesh. And Ruach HaKodesh, by the way, divine inspiration, is, even though prophecy hasn't existed since the time of the building of the second temple, like we talked about, Ruach HaKodesh is not disappeared, which people can still have Ruach HaKodesh. And what is the next level after Ruach HaKodesh? Yes! Tchiat HaMetim, resurrection of the dead.
So the third level.
His goal of writing that book was to bring the resurrection. People don't realize that. That was his goal for writing that book. The more Jews that follow Mesilat Yesharim and get to the highest levels of Mesilat Yesharim increases Ruach HaKodesh, which will increase the likelihood of bringing Tchiat HaMetim sooner. And if you know anything about the Ramchal in his earlier days, he had a yeshiva of Kabbalah where people would learn Zohar 24/7, which means there was shifts, but there was always people studying Zohar. Why? What he says is litaken, to correct the Shekhinah, which means to correct the image of God in the world, which we know is not what it needs to be. And that was 300-something years ago. Now it's even worse, right? The image of God in the world, although what's going on with the state of Israel right now in Sahel is raising up the image of God in the world, but that's a whole other discussion for another day, right? To raise up the image of God in the world and to bring the Mashiach and the resurrection of the dead. That was his goal. But they shut him down because he was an unmarried Sephardic rabbi who was in his early 20s, not married, studying Kabbalah, writing a book called Zohar Tidyana, which is a second Zohar, where the Tikkunei Zohar discusses 70 perushim of the first pasuk of the Torah, Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in the language of the Zohar, wrote another book, which is 70 perushim on the last pasuk of the Torah. So he made the people, the rabbis in Italy, very, very nervous. Very, very nervous. This is 100-something years after Shabtai Tzvi, so that the Jewish people had enough of these Sephardic people who studied Kabbalah and not married, okay? And they forbade him from writing any new books in Kabbalah. They forbade him from teaching Kabbalah publicly.
Did he get married?
They forbade him permanently. So he had to bury the books. He had to bury the books that he wrote in the beginning of his life. Those books were probably better than the books we have from the end of his life. Because over there, he didn't pull any punches. There's no hinting. He's putting it right there. The books he wrote later on, he had to dress them. Which means he's got sod. He's got secrets he wants to teach. In Derech Hashem, in Da'at Tvunot, in Mesilat Yesharim. But what is he doing is couching it in a book that's like it's written for the masses. And this way he was able to live up to his promise that he's not going to teach Kabbalah publicly. But within his Sfarim, you have all of his Kabbalistic system. And if a person has a good breadth of knowledge of all of his Sfarim, you could understand his Kabbalistic information in his books that are written for everybody. That was his genius.
What's the first book? It's still around. What do you do? Do you want to put out? They didn't let him put it out.
Those books are buried. We never found them yet. We should be zoche in the very near future to search somewhere in Padua, Italy, and find the buried books of the Ramchal. Oh my gosh, how would that change potentially the Torah world?
What's Zohar Tata?
Tinyana.
Zohar Tinyana, secondary.
Is the Zohar by
Zohar
the way?
Tinyana.
Huh?
Another one?
Is this fellow the Zohar?
What follows Zohar?
This person who wrote the book.
Which book? The one we're learning now?
Yeah.
This book helps your person to understand the Zohar, just like it helps you understand the Tanakh.
Oh, it's a definition, like a commentary on the Zohar.
This is not a commentary on the Zohar. But the Ramchal, there are commentaries on the Zohar. There are well-known commentaries on the Zohar. That's not the purpose of Shaare Orah. The purpose of Shaare Orah, first and foremost, is teaching the names of God, right? We discussed that. When a person studies Shaare Orah, they'll be open up the Ramban on the Sefer Torah, on the Chumash, and understand what the Ramban is saying Kabbalistically that he doesn't explain in a lot of detail, and the art scroll doesn't translate.
The fellow you just mentioned, he was like 19, 20 years old and wrote a book.
Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, what did he have a parish in the Zohar?
Is that like a commentary on the Zohar?
He has one book that's a commentary on a specific section of the Zohar called Adir Bamarom. You ever hear of the Gaon Vilna, the Gra? Vilna Gaon, you heard of him, yes? One of the greatest Ashkenazi rabbis of the past 400 years, yes? When the Vilna Gaon received his copy of Adir Bamarom, he put on his clothing of Yom Tov, and he treated it like a day of Yom Tov. And he said, if this rabbi was still alive, I would go by foot from Vilna to go to see and to learn from this rabbi. To understand, the Vilna Gaon was brilliant. And yet he recognized the brilliance of the Ramchal. Wow. Imagine that would have happened, that connection together. Wow.
It's like 200 years later, right?
No, 20 years later. I think.
But they didn't live in the same time.
Yes, they did.
He got the book late.
The Ramchal died in 1740, if I'm not mistaken. The Vilna Gaon was living at the same time, and he lived later than that. So they were contemporaries, but the greatness of the Ramchal hadn't gotten to Vilna. And so by the time the greatness of the Ramchal got to Vilna, he was already gone. Okay.
Did Ramchal ever get married?
Yes, 26 he got married. Guess how much the Ramchal got paid for being a rabbi?
Zero liras.
Zero. He was a glass blower.
But he was a glass manufacturer. That was his trade?
Wow. Cool. You have a lot of that.
I don't know how that worked from Amsterdam, but anyway. Okay, let's continue on. We're not getting far on this book today. Sorry, if anybody has to go, please go, but I'm not stopping for at least another hour. Okay, continuing on. So we brought a bunch of Pisukim that talk about the language of Shivu'ah. Now let's look on the bottom. Oh, there's nothing on the bottom. Okay, let's move on to the top of the next page. Therefore, our rabbi said, in Sifri, in the Midrash, for Parashat Matot, Shivu'ah kenishba b'melech. A Shivu'ah is a swear in the king. We'll see what this means. Lefichach en nishba'in levatel et Torah. You cannot make a swear to nullify, to cancel the Torah. Why? Or achat mitzvotea, or one of the mitzvot of the Torah. Why? From the simple meaning. We'll see if we have a deeper explanation after. Why can't a person make a swear and say they're not going to follow one of the mitzvot?
We cannot do that.
Why not?
How can you swear?
There's case by case where you
Question:
Don't do it.
can a person swear
No.
that he's going to wake up to tefillin?
No.
Why not?
Because you can't swear on something God told you to do.
You swore on Har Sinai.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. You're right. It's a swear. It's a swear against a swear. 'Cause
You swore on Har Sinai
So be like mehafer your own.
that you, very good. We discussed this before. Listen,
Last week.
you already swore on Har Sinai that you're going to follow all the mitzvot.
Right.
So if you swore on Har Sinai in God's name, you're going to follow the mitzvot. And now you're swearing now you're not going to follow the mitzvot. Well, guess what? It doesn't work. So you get 39 lashes for making a false swear, and you put on tefillin. Therefore, as a Jew, if you were born a Jew, even though it appears like you could choose to be Shomer Shabbat, you can choose to eat kosher, it's only an illusion of choice. You really don't have a choice. You already swore you're going to follow the Torah. And you can't say to me, well, we were forced to swear. No. The Torah, the written Torah, we accepted with a swear. What we didn't accept initially was the oral Torah. Tefillin is mentioned in the written Torah. Therefore, you can't say, well, I was forced. Anus Rahamana Patra. You can't say, well, I'm Patur because I was forced. No. You swore voluntarily, every Jewish man and woman swore in God's name on Har Sinai that they're going to follow the written Torah. When God said, by the way, it's a buy one, get one free, Jewish people, okay? This is the first tufa. The tufa is you got yourself the written, now you're going to take the oral too. That's what they said, wait a minute, that's not what we asked for. And that's when God lifts up the mountain and forces them to accept the oral law. But because it was forced,
It doesn't really count until
it was voluntary. Not really, but yes. Until
Kimu v'kiblu mash.
Purim. Purim, what did they do? It says Kimu v'kiblu. Means they fulfilled what they already accepted. That's the Torah Shebe'al Peh. That's the written Torah. So now a Jew living today, since the time of Purim, cannot say, I'm not following what it says in the Talmud. Yes, you are. Because you swore in the time of Purim when God saved us. And remember, Haman was the one who caused that to happen, not the prophets. En nishba'in levatela Torah or achat mitzvotea, or any one of the mitzvot of the Torah. V'im yishava, and if a person makes a swear that he's not going to fulfill a mitzvah, lokeh umkayemet mitzvah. He gets lashes, and then he has to do the mitzvah. What's that?
I think that's the way you can beat it.
I'm all ears.
He said, I'm not going to put on film on Shabbos.
That's not beating it. The rabbis told you don't put on tefillah on Shabbat. That's not beating nothing.
Someone said you can't put on
That's
Shabbos.
that's not. No, that's not beating nothing. You have to put on tefillin. Every day you're supposed to put on tefillin. It says, miyamim yamima, day to day, except for the days the rabbi said no tefillin. Okay? So that doesn't work. Okay? You would probably get lashes for swearing on Shabbat also, because Shabbat you don't have to put on tefillin. So what are you swearing about something you're not obligated to do? Okay? She'en shivuah halal levatel divrei Torah. Because a shivuah cannot cancel out words of Torah. You cannot cancel out any divrei Torah with a shivuah. Sharehem sod shiva kolot. Because the Torah is from the sod of shiva kolot. What is shiva kolot? The 7 kolot. What do we say the 7 kolot are? 7 kolot, 7 enaim, 7 eyes, 7 sfirot.
Yeah, but you can't cancel out even if you didn't make a swear on
I get it, but we're just learning here that the source of the Jew following the Torah is Har Sinai, the swears on Har Sinai. And if a Jew is not following the Torah, what does it say? It's as if he's doubting the creation of the world, which was created in 7 days. Yatsu misheva sfirot b'matan Torah, which means those 7 voices. V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. Now, what does it mean when the parasha says, V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot? I'll translate. And all of the nation saw the voices. What's the question you have to ask yourself? How do you see sound? You can't see sound. So when you look at that pasuk from a Peshat point of view, what do you have to say to yourself? It was some kind of a miracle that happened. They were able to see sound. Can anybody give me another explanation?
They saw the sphere.
Yes! V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. They saw, they perceived the sfirot. What are the kolot? Yes. The kolot, the voices, we just learned, is the Torah couching this Kabbalistic concept of the sfirot.
So they saw.
Now, why is a voice a very good mashal, analogy? Voice. The eye is easy to understand. Why is the eye easy to understand? Because if you look at the anatomy of the eye, what do you have in your eye? You have a lens. Anybody have cataracts before? Cataracts? What's cataracts? It's the lens getting cloudy. So in your eye, you have a lens. What do we say the sfirot are? Lenses. So the fact that the eye, the prophet says that the eyes is the sfirot, we understand that. That fits very nicely. Who can tell me how sound, voices, kolot, voices are the same idea?
Nope, they're both interpreted.
How is a voice produced?
The drum. Your drum.
You have the vocal cords, which vibrate. The breath that comes through is the same every time. The source is unchanged. The only thing that the vocal cords do is they filter the air that's coming through them and produce sound. And then you have the 5 aspects of your mouth, the lips, the teeth, the back of the palate, the throat. This is what enunciates the Hebrew letters. We just described the sfirot. What is sfirot? Yud Kei Vav Kei is the source of the sfirot, is all of the light of the sfirot, light being a good analogy, but the best one we can come up with, right? The light is the same. The sfirot are lenses. It's the same idea. Voice, kol, is produced the same way. Yatsu misheva sfirot b'matan Torah ve'en adam nishba levatel divrei Torah v'chol shvuah b'Adonai. And every shivuah with Yud Kei Vav Kei, v'chol neder leHashem, and every neder that's to Yud Kei Vav Kei, the sod neder. What is a neder? It's different than a shivuah. L'Adonai adayin nefaresh oto b'makom be'ezrat Hashem. We're going to explain neder in another place, because a neder is connected to one of the different sfirot. A shivuah, we said, is El Chai. Okay? We'll learn later on where neder is, okay? Ki neder, who sod, he's going to say it, sod ha-Shabbat ha-Gadol. What is Shabbat ha-Gadol?
Why do we call it Agadol? Is that the question?
He says that the shivuah, the source of the shivuah is from the word shiv'ah, which is what? The yesod, right? Because it's the 7th sfirah from Binah, right? Counting down from Binah, the seventh Sfirah is Yesod. So therefore, Shavuah is connected to the Yesod. Neder is connected to which? He just said, Sod Shabbat HaGadol, Shehi Sod HaShevi'it HaElyonah. What is the seventh feminine? Shevi'it is feminine.
No, but you said no, it's right because it's the house at the top.
Elyonah.
Get it. It's Bina.
Binah. What is the feminine sfirah that is Elyonah? It's the Binah. So we see a neder is connected to the Binah, which is Shabbat HaGadol. I think there's a lot to learn in this book. Shabbat HaGadol. Wow. Okay, let's go to the bottom of the book. The bottom on the bottom. Shivuah kenishba b'melech. A swear is like swearing in the king. Okay? Katava nefesh hachayim. Who wrote the nefesh hachayim? Also, one of the greatest rabbis for the Ashkenazim in the past 400 years. It's called Rav Chaim Mivolozhin. Who is Rav Chaim Mivolozhin's teacher? The Gra. Thank you very much. And Rav Chaim Mivolozhin was the Gra's chief student in Nigle. What is Nigle? The revealed Torah. Even though the Nefesh HaChaim is talking about Sod. He had another student who was his chief student in Nistar. Yitzhak Isaac Haver. That's his name, if I remember correctly. Okay? So we're going to read from the Nefesh HaChaim, which is the book by the student of the Gra, the chief student of the Gra in Nigle. But what he's talking about here is not Nigle. Because if you look at the Nefesh HaChaim, only the fourth, there's 4 sections. Only the 4th section is studied in yeshiva. Why? Because that's the only one that doesn't have too much Kabbalistic stuff in it. But the rest is all Kabbalah. That's Nistar. Kabbalah is Nistar. Yes. Okay. Katav b'nefesh hachayim. Guess what? Shaar. Shaar Aleph. Why Shaar Aleph? Because that's the Kabbalistic stuff. Okay. Shaar Dalet is the one that's studied in yeshiva. B'zeh loshono. Sha'onesh lefi hapagam shepagam lemala. The punishment that a person receives for violating precepts of the Torah is according to the damage that one caused in the spiritual world. Ve'eno domeh hamtanef chatzer hamelech. And there's no comparison between a person who causes there to be defilement in the courtyard of the king, which is the world of Asiya, lemetanef paltin shel melech, versus the person who causes there to be defilement in the palace of the king. That's the Yetzirah. The kol sheken hakiseh. What's the kiseh? The world of Bria. O bigdei tifarto, or the clothing of his beauty. Ze'er anpin and tiferet. Okay? The kol sheken haketer, and how much more so the keter. Okay? So the higher the level of defilement, the higher level of where that defilement reaches, the greater the punishment in this world. Or the greater the punishment in the next world if the person doesn't get punished in this world. That's what Rav Chaim Mivolozhin said. Now he stops there. Kidi batikunim, like it says in the Tikkunim. There's Tikkunei Zohar. What's the Tikkunei Zohar? That's the 70 perushim on the first pasuk of the Torah. It's called Tikkunei Zohar. Okay, the Zohar was published in 4 different publications, 4 different sections. And that's why there are different names. There's Zohar, there's Zohar Chadash, there's Tikkunei Zohar, right? Because it was published a couple of different times. Okay, not the whole book, because it was expensive back then. Remember, the Zohar was, shall we say, found, okay, in 1200, right? That's before the printing press. So the first printing, people wanted to print books as quickly as possible, right? So they had to collect money, because you had to pay the Goyim a lot of money to print books, okay? It was easy to do that for the Talmud. Why is it easy for the Talmud? Because everybody studies the Talmud. So that was easy to collect. But you have a smaller pool of people who are studying the Zohar, and it still costs a lot of money to publish it. So that's why I was published in sections. Kitab Tikunim. Tikkun Mem Gimel, 43 out of 70. The Ko Man Defasha Bipikuda Kilu Pasha Bidyukana Melech. Whoa. Whoever causes there to be criminal activity in the Pikuda, in the mitzvah, Ki'ilu. Look at this. What is Ki'ilu? As if he causes there to be damage in the image of the king. Why Ki'ilu? Because you can't damage the image of the king. At the end of the day, the image of the king can't be changed. There's no damage. Lo yigurecha ra. Ra has no way to penetrate to the high levels, but it can have the image that it did. Like we see now. Candace Owens, Shemina Shemirkav, Tucker Carlson, Shemina Shemirkav. These people think that they're causing damage, or they're desiring to cause damage. They're not really.
On the surface, yeah.
They are, what's going to happen is whatever damage we think they're causing, okay, is really not damaging the king at all. The king is undamaged. The image of God in the world is damaged, but not, chas v'shalom, from a real point of view, which means how people see Yud Kei Vav Kei, their perception is wrong. Their perception is damaged, but there's no damage to Yud Kei Vav Kei in the image. It's only how it appears. And what's going to change when God reveals himself to the world and Yud Kei Vav Kei is there for everybody to see? It's repaired immediately. Just like the mullahs are going to learn this week. Mullahs. The mullahs. His patience is done. The patience of Trump is done. And he is the Koresh of our time. He is the vehicle of bringing the wrath of God on the Egyptians, on the Iranians.
There used to be, was there a yeshiva that from Yirmiya's time that was in Iraq at one point?
I think so, yes. Iran.
Iran?
Yes.
That they destroyed?
Good luck. Let's see when they go back to the Stone Age. They like to live in tents anyway, so let them live in tents. It's okay. It's good. No electricity. No bridges. Good luck. What's that?
I even have a song after that. Bam, 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 Iran.
I love it. Love it. Very good. I don't think the Beach Boys would be happy appropriating their song. They're pretty liberal. Okay? They were from California. Okay. Ve'akavanashim shilu hanhagata shiur komashal sfirot. Now listen what he's talking about here. That they himshilu. What does that mean? We have a mashal. There's something called shiur koma. What is shiur koma? What we talk about, if you look in the Sidur, I think it's in your Sidur also, Charlie. Tikkun Nefesh, right? The Gulgolta corresponds to the Keter. The Chokhmah corresponds to the Moach Yamin. The Binah corresponds to the Moach Smol. The chotam, which is the nose, corresponds to the da'at
Yeah,
tachton.
the koma is the
The
spinal.
peh corresponds to the, we already said that, that's the malchut, right? And then we have the body. The zroa is the chesed, right arm. The zroa on the left is the gevurah. The guf, the body, is the tiferet. The netzach is the right thigh. The hod is the left thigh. The yesod is the shaft. And the atara, the crown, is the malchut. And what do we know about the peh and the ateret?
Peh tachton, peh elyon.
There's an upper mouth and a lower mouth. The upper mouth is the mouth here. The lower mouth is the mouth down there. Everybody got me on that one? No? It's not a mouth? Which is confusing for you?
We need to feel the
Give him a chance. Think about the holes. Where are the holes of a human body? You have 2 eyes, right? And there you have 2 ears. They're the furthest apart. Then you have 2 eyes, which are closer. Then you have 2 nares, which are very close, but still 2 nares, 2 nostrils, not 1. Then you have the mouth. That's in the middle. That's 1. Now go down the list, not including the umbilicus, which until you're born doesn't count, right? After you're born doesn't count. That's in the middle. That's a hole in the middle. When you go next, where do you have the next hole? If you're a man, got it? And then there's a hole in the back. What's that called? Baal Peor.
Is that a joke?
No. That's why the worship of Baal Peor is through defecation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Peor is an orifice.
That's the AZ. AZ. That's where they would defecate in front of the idol. That was the way it was worshipped, through defecation. It's one of the Baal. One of the Baal was Baal Peor, which is basically, what does Peor mean?
An orifice.
They would defecate in front of the idol.
What does Baal mean?
Baal is a type of god. There were Baalim, there were many gods in the ancient times, and there were different gods. They were all Baal, but they had different types of gods. Baal Peor. There was other Baal. All the gods were named Baal. Many of them were named Baal. It was sort of like a generic term for a false idol. That's what I said yesterday, which we can record now. Okay, what did I say yesterday? That if you go back, how many gods were there in Arabia?
Pre-Islamic Arabia.
Pre-Islamic Arabia, there were 360.
One for every day.
One for every day. No, not for every day, because we have 365. Why 360? How many degrees are there in a circle? 360, which means infinite amount of gods. Yeah. Okay. Really, there are 360 stations. And there was a certain city, which the Muslims say was Mecca, which we know is probably Petra, okay, in Jordan. And that's where they would go. And any person who would go to that city was not harmed, regardless of your religion. It was sort of like a city that you could practice any religion you wanted. 360, which means all the gods were represented there. Okay? Now.
In the Gemara,
1 second. What tribe was, if Muhammad really lived, what tribe was Muhammad from? Quraysh. And what was the name of the false god of the Quraysh tribe? Allah. So all he did, if you believe the standing Islamic narrative, which I don't, is he destroyed 359 and left the 1. That's the monotheism of Islam. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. You know, I'm not.
They believe like the Jews, but they don't, because their God is totally different than ours.
Well, let's put it this way: their God is closer to ours than Christianity's God is. Would you agree with that?
No.
3 and 1, 1 is 3. Absolutely. Stop it. The Muslims think that the Christians are kuffar because they believe in 3 gods that are 1.
They do?
Okay? That's idolatry, mamash. Islam has a monotheistic understanding of God with some things that are completely wrong, like fatalism and things like that. But they have idolatrous practices. They have practices that are remnants of idolatry. That's what we discussed yesterday.
Well, Muhammad is a man doing it. That's what I look at.
Muhammad is what?
They're Muhammad. They say he's a prophet. He's not a prophet. I look at him as he's a men's room attendant. That's what I look at him as.
Men's room attendant. I don't think he even existed, but that's another question for another day. All right. Coming back here.
Sorry, I do. So now that I know what Baal means in that time period, in the Gemara, they also use that word, that same word, Baal Tacher, but it means something else.
Baal is also a husband.
No, right, but it says Baal Tacher.
I think you're saying Bet Lamed, which is
Baal
with a
is
ayin.
no.
With an ayin, Baal Ta'acher. Baal Ta'acher is someone who gets late to something, right?
A master of lateness. Means master.
Or something.
Is that how you would translate it?
Master of lateness. He's Baal,
Yeah, a procrastinator.
a procrastinator. So the word Baal means a master. Okay? So there was the master Allah. Baal Allah. That was the god of the Quraysh tribe. Okay? All right. Where are we here? Let's see. 1 second. Lost my place. Okay. So without Kitiva Tikunim, Koman de Fashab Bikutakilo Pashab Dukan Melech, which means we understand this the Dukan of the Melech, which means Hakavanashim Shilu Hanagata Shiura Komashal Sfirot, which means just like the Sfirot are laid out in the image of man. Or really, that's not correct. Let me correct myself. Man is made in the image of the Sfirot, which means first came the Sfirot. Then God created man. And when he created man, how did he create man? Similar to the Shiur Koma of how God interacts with the world. That's the Sfirot.
We're not an image of God.
You have to, what does that mean? I mean, we're going to get into the whole big thing over here.
Man created an image of God.
Tell me what that means, please.
I have no idea.
God has no image, right? So how does that mean? How does a pshat person who reads that pasuk understand what the heck that means? Man is created in the image of God. So you have to come on to things that just like we have the ability to create and destroy, God creates and destroys, blah, 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 which means we're spiritually similar. We have the same powers, but much less than God, right? That's what it is. We're sort of that techasero me'at me'elohim. There's a pasuk in the Tehillim that says, "I made him." I think no, it's not Tanakh. I made him smaller than Elohim, and that's talking about man.
Micro.
Man is micro, but we have a because the word is selem. What is selem?
Micro.
So just like the sfirot, there's two ways the sfirot are portrayed. One is igulim, circles, like the skins of an onion, one inside the other, with the keter being the one that's on the outside, chokhmah being the next one on the inside, then the next one is binah, then the next one is chesed, and then gevurah. Each one in igulim, like an onion. What's the problem with igulim?
One is more important than the other. One is bigger.
There's another problem with igulim.
The beginning and an end.
Where's the beginning and end? A circle has no beginning and no end.
It's infinite. No.
A circle has a beginning and an end?
No, it doesn't.
If it's a movement, no, but static.
A circle has no. How many points are there on a? Let's ask the geometry question. How many points are there in a circle? Infinite. Good. Okay, so that means it has no beginning. Circle has no beginning, has no end, has infinite amount of points. Okay. Now, the igulim. There's a problem with the igulim. What's the problem? There's no sachar and onesh. Why? Because there's no chesed, there's no gevurah, and there's no middle. So therefore, the sfirot are also presented in lines, which means that's called shiur koma. The sfirot presented in lines, keter, chokhmah, binah, da'at, chesed, givurah, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, malchut, that is shiur koma, which means there are 3 lines. There's the kav of chesed, there's the kav of givurah, and then there's the kav of rachamim. So the igulim, the problem with the igulim, it's not a problem, is what? One leads to the other. With the koma, with the lines, there is what's called mashkela, balance. You have chesed, which is balanced by gvura, which then has tiferet. There's balance. The Zohar almost exclusively talks about the kavim, talks about the yosher, does not discuss the igulim at all, with very rare places. So almost all,
What if it refers to
it's
by
not
different
discussed. It's not relevant to us because we are living now in a time of schar v'onesh.
What are we comparing the onion to?
The onion is the igulim. One circle, then a smaller circle, then a smaller circle, then a smaller circle. Okay? And if you think about it, there's another issue.
What is the onion?
What's that?
What is in the heart, the main?
The malchut. Now there's a problem. The center of the igulim is the malchut. Yes?
Yes.
In the yosher, the malchut is not in the center. It's not in the end either.
So the top, bottom.
So you have the halal, which is the igul, right? And then you have the yosher, right? The yosher, the malchut goes below the middle of the circle, but doesn't go to the other end. Because if it went to the other end, then the whole world is canceled.
I don't get that.
Leave it alone. Another class for another
The
day.
problem, real quick, the malchut is below the center.
The malchut is below the
It's
center.
out of the.
Because remember, you have the Adam Kadmon, then you have the Atzilut, you have the Bria, you have the Yetzirah, and you have the Asiyah. And the Malchut of the Asiyah is below the middle of the circle.
Okay.
And if you think about what I just said, makes no sense because the circle has no middle, has no up, no down. The circle is just your circle.
You either inside the circle or outside the circle.
So it's all inside, everything's inside the circle.
Even the malchut.
Yeah, everything's inside the circle. Everything that is in this world, a part of the world, whether it's the created world or the world that existed that was newly seen, it's all within the halal. Okay, getting off topic here. Okay, continue on. So Diuknan Shel Melech, what does that mean? The image, the word Diuknan is the Aramaic for Tselem. So what does it mean man is created in God's image from a Kabbalistic point of view? Just like we have the Sfirot with the lines, which is called Shiur Koma. Similarly, we have the human body created similar. Why?
We need to relate.
Because the goal is for man to look at his body and then be able to perceive how God interacts with the world. That's called the Sfirot. Who is the first person to do this?
King David.
No.
You said in the
Who is the first person to do this?
Abraham.
Avraham Avinu.
Okay.
Avraham Avinu looked at his body, and that's how he understood how the Sfirot worked. And when he figured it out, he wrote a book called,
Sefer Yetzirah.
thank you,
But what
Sefer Yetzirah.
in the Torah, where does he look at his body? Is it Lech Lecha? Is it Brita Betarim? Is it somewhere in between?
Avraham Avinu.
What's it called?
Sefer Yetzirah.
And I can get that?
The book of
You
creation.
can.
get
Good
it
luck.
in English, you
Good
can
luck
get it in Hebrew.
understanding it. But yeah, you can get it. It's in English.
We-
Arya Kaplan. You want to get the one that you might be able to get some benefit from?
I know that man.
So get Arya Kaplan's.
His sons were on my bus today. He was on my bus that morning. He passed away on a Friday. his kids, I was a bus driver, and I worked from Sister Spiritual Slime, and I had 4 of his kids. And one kid was misbehaving. He came out of the bus that morning because I called him inside, and he came out. It was a Friday morning, and I spoke to him that day, the day he died.
Wow. Well, Aryeh Kaplan has a book Sefer Yetzirah. It's in English. Okay. Okay, and it's amazing to read it because, first of all, that rabbi, brilliant. He was brilliant. He understood physics, brilliant. Anyway, the kavanah shimshilu hanagat shir kamal shel sfirot. So we see that there's a mashal. Imshilu. Mashal means what? The mashal is the human body. The nimshal is the sfirot. Right? B'mashal hamelech, with the mashal of the melech. Hasfirot hamanigim ha'olam, the sfirot that guide, that run the world. Of course, God runs the world through the sfirot. That's what we mean here, right? Hem guf hamelech, they are the body of the melech, the body of the king. The sfirot shemechayot et haguf, the sfirot which give life, give living ability to the body. Hem hagimel rishonim, are the 3 on top: Keter, Chochmah, and Binah. That's called the Gar. Gimel Rishonim. Vehem Neshama L'Sfirot HaTachtonot. When we say the word Neshama, what do we mean? Spiritual giving of life. What is the Neshama? Gives spiritual life to the human body. Right? Gives physical life to the human body as well. Because spiritual life and physical life are connected to each other. Okay? But the neshama of the sfirot is the gar. Keter, Chochmah, and Binah is the neshama of the sfirot. Continuing on. Velachen, beneder, when a person makes a neder, she'ola ad la binah. Unlike a shivu'ah, which goes to the yesod, from the shiv'ah, the neder goes to the kiseh hakavod, which is the binah. Shehi notenet chayim lamelech. And this is what gives chayim to the melech. Nikra noder b'chayei hamelech. He's called the noder in the life of the king. Now, what is the punishment if a man makes neder and doesn't fulfill the neder?
39.
Got it. That.
No, dead, no.
Electric chair.
39 slashes. 13.
I'm asking for the spiritual punishment, not the physical punishment. What is the punishment if a man makes a neder and doesn't fulfill the neder?
His shefa is cut off from that line.
Translate that into English.
No parnasa.
The Gemara says a man who makes a neder and doesn't fulfill it, his wife.
Wife?
A lot of people do that. They know that.
Where is the example?
Oh, Yaakov.
Vayita Yaakov neder. What did he swear? He made a neder that whatever Hashem gives him, he's going to give a tenth. When he comes back to the land of Israel. He comes back to the land of Israel, and what happened? He did not fulfill his neder. What happened? Rachel dies.
Aladera.
But that's not the case. Why she died because of the
Binyamin?
idols.
The Teraphim?
Charlie, that's what you say. Very nice. And you know what? There are Mefarshim that say exactly what you say. But there are other opinions that say the reason she died is why? Because of Yaakov. And how do we know? How do we know? Vani meta alai Rachel baderech. What is Yaakov Avinu? When Yaakov Avinu saw Rachel die, did he say she died because she stole her father's trafim?
Meta alai.
Meta alai. She died because of me. What does it mean because of me? I didn't fulfill my neder.
But he was not there yet.
Was it intentional?
He wasn't not in.
No, he was in the land of Israel.
They buried her right away.
As soon as he comes into the land of Israel, within a very short period of time, Rachel dies. And there's all kinds of reasons, because he was married to two sisters. That only works outside the land of Israel. Once he comes to the land of Israel, someone's got to go. So, of course, it's going to be Rachel, because she was the second wife, not the first one. The first one was okay. The second one wasn't. It could be because she stole the trafim, right? Because what does Rachel say? Whoever has the trafim, no, Yaakov Avinu also said that. He said, whoever has the trafim will die.
Yes.
So we see two places where Yaakov caused Rachel's death. One, because he spoke improperly by saying whoever has a trafim will die. And also because he didn't fulfill his neder.
But if he just came in, how he's going to get the 10% immediately?
How is he going to get the 10%?
How is going to give it?
Okay.
To who?
Okay. When he met with Esav, what did Yaakov do?
Offer him all the stuff.
So?
He didn't accept it.
Okay. So all he has to do is go to Shem or go to Ever or whoever's left over and give it over. Like, what did Avraham Avinu do? He gets the spoils of the war. What does he do? He goes to Shem. And he gives him aser. He gives him a tenth. Why? Because Shem was Kohen le'el elyon. Give me a chumash. I'll show you exactly where. Right after the Brit Ben Abitarim, right after the war of the 4 and 5 kings, when Avraham came back, he goes to Shem and gives him a tenth. First of all, Avraham Avinu took nothing from the spoils, right? But he still gave him a tenth. Yaakov should have gone to whoever Shem or whoever who was afterwards, whoever's left over there, whoever's Kohen le'el elyon now, because it wasn't Yaakov, and should have given him a tenth. He didn't do that. He promised he was going to do that when he was leaving Padan Aram, when he was leaving for Padan Aram. Meta alai Rachel. Give me the Chumash. I'll show you instead. I think it's Rashi who says it, but it might not be Rashi. Maybe it was the Torah or some of them. Let me see. First of all, what does he make the net there? Vaidar Yaakov neder lemor imi Elohim imadi ushmarani baderech hazeh asher anochi holech v'natani lechem lechol ubeged lilbosh, which means what Yaakov is asking for? He's asking for bread and clothing, because right now he has nothing. Right? He's leaving, he has nothing. V'shavti b'shalom bet avi, when I return to the house of my father. V'haya Adonai li Elohim, and God, of course, is going to be for me a God. Yes. Then it says over here, V'chol asher titen li aser aserenu lach, which means he's going to give a tenth. That's what he says. Okay, now. When he was, limping, where did he promise? That's what I'm talking about, when he left for Haran. Where did he say Meta alai Rachel? That's in Vayechi, right? That's in Parashat Vayechi. I think, 1 second. Yep. Vani befoi mi padan meta alai Rachel beretz Kenan baderech ועוד כברת ארץ לבוא אפרתה ויקבריה שם בדרך אפרתי בית לחם. Now let's see what Rashi says.
This is that in Vayetze, no?
One second. Okay, it's not Rashi.
You need to make her out good luck.
It's not Rashi. I think it's the Talmud. No, it's any Torah to me. They don't have it here. I'll show it to you. So there's a couple of reasons, right? But the Gemara says that wife, I think children also, but I'm not 100% sure. I have to remember that. Wife dies because of neder that the husband doesn't fulfill. Why should it be the wife?
Dina?
Or the malchut, either way. Yes? Okay. Continuing on. And now we understand, why do we do hatarat nedarim before Rosh Hashanah Kippur?
Because you don't want to have that punishment in the book, in advance.
When we
The
get
next year.
judged, we don't want to be having this.
No, we don't want to have anything.
And that's why there are some communities, specifically the Syrian community, they do hatarat nedarim 40 days before Rosh Hashanah and 40 days before Yom Kippur. In addition to right before Rosh Hashanah and right before Yom Kippur. Why 40 days? Because the Zohar says if a person has a neder and doesn't fulfill the neder for 40 days, from the hatarat, from 40 days, they cannot see the Shekhinah.
Wait, they make a neder.
Person makes a neder, does a hatara. It takes 40 days for the person to be able to, after doing the hatara, to be able to see the Shekhinah.
That's like a Tavul Yom, sort of. He doesn't really
Can't really connect
after.
until 40 days afterwards.
No matter how dumb the neder is.
We don't make neders. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, because we neder.
I always say be neder.
Good. Bli neder is good. What's that? I'm saying that there are Sephardic communities, of which the Syrians are one, that they do hatarat nedarim 40 days before Rosh Hashanah, which means right after Tisha B'Av, the Shabbat right after Tisha B'Av, Shabbat, what you call it? Vayet Hanan, right? They do hatarat nedarim that Shabbat, after Motzei Shabbat, and they do 40 days before Yom Kippur.
I've never seen it here.
We're not,
Are these Syrians?
we don't have enough Syrians here.
You said not only the Syrians.
I said Syrian. No, I said some Sephardic communities, obviously not the Moroccans. Yes. That's like saying, is there a difference in a Litvak and a German Jew? Is there a difference in a Yeki and a Litvak? Yekis are on time. Yekis are on time. Litvaks are never on time, right? So there you go. So there are differences. So Sephardim have the same flavors.
There's always late. Israelis.
Yes, they're different. All right, very good. Listen, it is what it is. I talked about that yesterday. I'm not going to repeat it today. I went to town yesterday. Yes. Okay, we're good. Let's continue on. So understand what it says over here, neder. Watch this, because we're getting a little sense of where he's going in this book as we go on. Hopefully we'll get there in a couple of years. What does it say? V'lachen b'neder she'oleh the binah, the neder that goes to the binah. She notenet chayim lamelech nikra noder b'chayim melech, because the binah gives chayim to the malchut. How? V'nahar yotze me'eden lashkot et hagan. The nahar is zeranpin, the gan is the malchut, and the eden is bina. When God comes to Abraham and tells him Sarah is going to give birth to a son, what does she say? Ahare haitali edna.
Oh, Eden? Edna.
Oh, how am I going to be Binah, which is a mother of the next generation? Okay? Hi, Tali Edna. I'm no longer qualified to be Eden, which means I cannot give birth to the next generation.
Can I take something and make it better?
Wow, a different perspective. Otherwise, you have to come to I'm no longer beauty, I'm no longer young, all that. No, Edna. Because I'm Akara. I can't give birth to the next generation.
Yeah, but why is she questioning God?
She's not. Because basically, without a miracle, Sarah was not giving birth to anything.
Right.
And the tzaddikim generally don't like to have miracles done for them. Why? Because it subtracts from zichuyot, merits. When a person has a miracle done for them, it takes away from their merits. I'm talking about a revealed miracle. To Sarah, to have a child is a revealed miracle. It's not a hidden miracle. Why? Because Sarah was 89 years old and she had never had a period. She had never had a period. Why? Because what does the Torah say?
Oh, she was Akara.
Akara en la valad. She was barren. She had no son. What does that mean? Of course, she's barren. She has no son. If she has no son, she's barren. What's the double lashon? En la bet valad. That's what Rashi says. She had no uterus. If she has no uterus, she's got no period. So she's 89 years old, and she's never had a menstrual cycle. When is the first time that Sarah gets a menstrual cycle? Which was miraculous, because if you have no uterus, you have to grow one in order to have a menstrual cycle. Avraham Avinu tells Sarah what? Lushi v'asiugot. Go and make matzah. Is the matzah ever brought to the malachim? No. Why not? Because Sarah, for the first time in her life, became nida.
Is this in the Midrash?
Yes, come on. It's Rashi. It's a Midrash. Come on. Lushi asugot, ugot matzot kilo hametz.
Okay, so she can't touch the dough. I mean, she's touching the dough, but all of a sudden she's in dash. So
She cannot. Then she's done. She can't make the bread. She disappears. That's it. That's the end of Sarah's discussion. Which means she became. Rashi says she became nida. I think it's Rashi. Okay, first she has to stop bleeding. Well, she needs to make the bread now, not tomorrow or the next day.
They're hungry. It's Pesach.
Okay, so because the tzaddikim lived in a state of tahara all the time, so they did not allow themselves to become like in the time of in the Mishnah. We had great people who basically maintained themselves in a state of tahara even when they weren't going to the temple.
So you mean to say that if a woman has a period, she makes bread today?
They were all tameh. You can't count that. But in the time of the temple, when we had a concept of tumah and tahara, where we can purify ourselves, okay, then that's the answer.
What you make the bread for?
For the malachim, for Abraham.
Oh,
when they came to visit.
So he had to make the bread.
Somebody had to make the bread. It wasn't Sarah.
Maybe it wasn't
Is it Rashi?
Chadal. No. Torah. Chadal liot lesara orach kanashim. To be chadal, it needs to start for it to stop.
So it started. So what does orach kanashim mean?
A period.
So meaning what?
Her period stopped.
Really? Then how do you understand en la valad? That's Rashi?
Nope, that's just the straight Torah.
What does Rashi say?
Chadal liot pasak memana. Pasak mimena. Bereshit Rabbah.
Very nice. So now look the Rashi.
So it stops, so she must.
En la valad. How do you answer that?
Where's that one?
That's in the end of Noach.
Ooh. Okay. I'm back.
There's a machloket in Rashi.
Maybe started after the law.
If she has no uterus, how does she have a period?
God made a miracle that she got one.
she got a uterus, and then she got a period. So I'm trying to say that achare beloti hay. What's the word? What's the word pasuk said?
What? Oh.
Chadali ot l'sara ora kanashim. We have to understand what that means. Does that mean what you say? Does that mean that she no longer had a period? Because if that's what it means, then how do you understand the other Rashi where she had no uterus? Where's she bleeding from?
How do we know that she had no uterus?
Pasak.
Because Rashi tells us
Pasak.
this.
He wasn't around then.
Okay, we don't ask questions like that.
Pasak. Pasak milehemeve.
What's that? Look at the end of Noach. End of Noach. What does it say? Vesarai eshet Avram akara ela valad. Find it.
Go to Torah.
You can't find it? Come on.
Okay, so okay, and okay, sorry.
That's okay.
It doesn't.
You questioning Rashi?
I don't know.
We don't question Rashi in this. In this class, we don't question Rashi. Rashi wrote with the Ruach HaKodesh. That's the first thing. Second thing is Rashi is bringing much from the Midrash, which is also Ruach HaKodesh.
Okay.
So that's what the Midrash says.
All right. That's an answer.
That's a good answer.
No problem with that.
Did you find it?
It doesn't say.
Have you read the book of Shaare to Him? What about you?
Midrash Shaare to Him?
Midrash Shaare to Him.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, right.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I recently heard about it.
Okay, then it's not.
No, I'm going to bring you
Which we don't have here.
We don't have it.
Doesn't have.
Today too, or this doesn't exist no more?
What's that?
Because Ruach HaKodesh is that.
Ruach HaKodesh does. People can have Ruach HaKodesh as long as they finish up Mesilat Yesharim and act according to Mesilat Yesharim. Yes, even today. You ever talk to me, Ma?
No, it's a Mikrat Gedor.
Good luck. All right. Anyway, you'll have to take my word for it. It's in the Torah to Mimah for sure. That's what the Talmud says. En la bet valad. She had no uterus. Well, she had no uterus, then how does she have a period? How do we understand that? Hadal liot l'sara Orah kanashim.
Every month.
Oh, well, that would be possible because you don't have to have a uterus to have the symptoms. The symptoms are from the pituitary estrogen. So she might have had hormonal changes. Well, why would she have hormonal changes? Because it's a feedback loop. All right, let's leave that alone. Somehow she had some type of symptoms, but she didn't have any uterus. So if there's no uterus, then how's there bleeding? She was called an ilonite. What's an ilonite? Even though she had the body of a woman, okay, internally with her uterus, she had no uterus.
I thought you have to have like an androgynous. Oh,
No.
Androgynous is
Both. She didn't have both. Okay.
One but missing some.
She's missing a uterus. Anyway.
Okay.
But I'm not quoting that. I'm achare beloti haitali edna. Now we understand what that means. What does that mean? I no longer have
the powers of Eden to take something and make it
I
better.
can no longer become. I could. What is the role of the binah? The binah is to basically take from the parent and give it to the children. Yes, that's the binah. Emma banim smecha, right? That's the binah, and she's not the binah because she has no children. So Hashem fixed that. Okay, coming back here, we're the binah. We're still doing this. Okay, let's continue on. What is neder? The neder goes to the binah. She notenet chayim lemelech. She gives chayim to the melech. Nikra noder b'chayim melech. It's called noder b'chayim melech. Swearing in the life of the king. Neder otiyot nun shaare binah. Dar dalad resh, right? Nun shaare binah. Dar lives. Life from or living from the 50 gates of Binah. That's a neder. The Shvuah, shehi keneged binyana olamot, and the Shvuah is the binyan of the olamot, the building of the worlds, which is Yesod Olam. Okay? Nikra nishba b'melech atzmo. So the neder is basically nishba b'chayei hamelech, in the life of the king. The shvuah is a shvuah in the melech. Less potency. And that's why a shvuah cannot be undone. A neder has the concept of hafara and hatara. And there's another reason why a neder is going to have hafara and hatara. Why is there a concept of a neder that you can do a hatarat nedarim and basically cancel it? Why should that be, based on what we just learned?
What was the question?
There's no way to undo a shvuah. A person makes a shvuah, that's it, right? But a neder, there's hatara. A person go through before a bet din of 3 people, and he can be matir the neder. And if it's a woman who makes a neder and it affects her husband, and he hears it, but the day he hears it, he can do hafara, which is to remove the neder completely. Why does a neder have the ability to be removed, to be canceled, where shvuah does not?
The neder, when his wife made it, is not really complete. A woman cannot make a neder.
Women can make neder, but the husband has the ability to cancel it.
Right.
But a husband, when he makes a neder, he can't cancel. He has to go to bet din and cancel the form.
Right.
Why is there a concept of hatarat nedarim and not a concept of the same thing for shivua? I'm all ears. Wait, one at a time. Mazal. So yeah. So what does that mean? What do you mean neder is connected to the mazal? Can you explain that a little bit better? How is a neder connected to the mazal? What? What do you mean a neder is connected to the mazal? You want to think about it some more?
I don't know this version. I don't know.
What's the mazal? That's the keter. In what you're saying is correct. I just want to understand why you're connecting the two. Still didn't answer my question. Why is it that a neder is cancelable, but not the shivua?
That's what makes with them. Direct.
It's going to give you yesod, another reason why we do hatarat nedarim before Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. What else is cancelable? Yes!
An evil deed.
A decree from God is cancelable. And how does one get a canceled? How does one cancel the decree from God? Teshuvah. And teshuvah goes to what level? Rises up to kiseh hakavod. What is kiseh hakavod? The binah. So because teshuvah, which is the whole purpose of the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, is this concept of, yes, there are things that are decreed and we're going to cancel them through changing our behavior and doing teshuvah, tefillah, teshuvah, tetzedakah, ma'avinat roah hagzerah, right? The same idea. A neder is cancelable because it's in the binah. And why should that be? Because God's goal is not to punish the sinner. God's goal is what? To have the sinner repent and give him life. That's what we say on Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Life is the binah. That's called nitzchiyut. That's called everlasting life, no death. So when a person is accessing teshuvah, they're accessing everlasting life. The shivuah is a function of the zer anpin. Zer anpin is din, schar v'onesh. Even though Yesod is in the middle, so it's rachamim, but the bottom line is this is called hanagat ha'olam hazeh. The zer anpin is the government of this world. The binah, or the gimel rishonim, is the government of this world and the next world. So when a person does teshuvah and fixes it, The teshuvah goes to the kisei hakavod. He accesses nitzchiyut, which is what causes the decree to be canceled. You with me, Charlie?
I am. But I'm also recording it so I don't forget.
Okay. Okay, let's finish this up. So neder nun share bina dar. Okay? The shvua shehi keneged binyana olamot, because the shvua is the binyana olamot. Nikra nishba b'melech atzmo. Kedita b'sifri in Parashat Matot. Of course, that's the perfect place because Matot discusses neder and shvua. Ma ha'efresh ben nedarim l'shvua. What is the difference between neder and shvua? Bin darim kenoder b'chaya melech. When a person makes a neder, it's as if he's making a neder in the life of the king. B'shva kinishba b'melech atzmo, but the shva is making it with the melech himself. And even though there's no proof for that, there's a remembrance of that. So we understand that the word Chei Hashem, Chei Nafshecha, that is the language of a shvuah. Because you're swearing in the name of the king, or in the king, as opposed to a neder, which is in the life of the king. So there's a different lashon that is used.
12:45.
Oh, the next one's going to be amazing. I'll have to save it for next week then, I guess, huh? One more? One more? Let's do one more. En nishba'im levatel et Torah. You cannot make a swear to cancel the Torah. Okay? By the way, no, let's leave it alone. Bi'er Rabbeinu Bachye. Rabbeinu Bachye explained in Parashat Yitro. Mikan tavin sod hashivua ve'aneder. From here you will understand the secret of the shivua and the neder. Ki lashon shivua nigzar min sheva b'sheva sfirot. Because the language of the shivua is from the seven sfirot. Ki harei haneder lemala min hashivua. Because the neder is higher than the shivua. And because the involvement of the Torah is only with the seven, it's got to go. You got to go. Only with the seven. The Torah yatsa misham levad, and the Torah went out of there alone. En hashvua chalal levatel mitzvah. Therefore, you cannot have a shivua that cancels a mitzvah. She'i efshar l'shi'ur la'alot lemala mishi'uro ve'en titpalel ech titvatel ha-mitzvah mipnei ha-shivua, because the mitzvah is higher, and the shivua doesn't go high enough to cancel out the mitzvah. Continuing on. Ve'en ikar ha-mitzvah le'mi-ikar ha-shivua, and the essential part of the mitzvah is because of the shivua we made in Har Sinai. Aval ha-neder shu lemala min ha-shivua, but the neder, which is above the shivua, harahu chal levatel et ha-mitzvah. A neder can cancel out a mitzvah. Let's see what he's talking about here. Mipnei she'ikaro shel neder ole al ikar ha-shivua, because a neder is higher than a shivua. V'alken yesh lo koch levatel ha-mitzvah. Therefore, a neder has the power to cancel out a mitzvah. She min ha-shivua shehu lemata mimenu, because it comes from the shivua. Let's understand this. The biur katav ha-maharal. Oh, it's going to be good stuff. Maharal and Tiferet Yisrael. HaTorah eina tuluya baguf. The Torah is not connected to the person's body. V'hi ruchanit. It's only spiritual. Legamre. V'lachen nikret Torah or. Or is spiritual, not physical. Ki ha'or hu ruchani legamre. Because or is ruchani. Ve'ena tuluya b'chomer. And is not connected to anything that is physical. Everything that is wow. This is written by the Maharal, 1560. Maharal Prague. 15. Hold on a second. Let's see what he says over here. The Adua material who is underneath time, bound by space and time. And anything that is not material, is not bound by time. V'lachen haTorah ve'or enam tachat hazman. The Torah is timeless and Or is timeless. How do we understand that? I'm thinking about Einstein.
The spirit of light is relative.
As you approach
The
the speed of light,
something happens.
what happens to time?
Time slows down, or it goes backwards, or something.
So there's this weird relationship between light and time. This is the Maharal in 1550, 400 years before Albert Einstein. Again, we have to think about the physics here. This is very interesting to think about, okay? For the mitzvah is connected to gashmi things, physical things, right? Bisman mesuyam, with a specific time. Certain mitzvot are done at certain times. V'lachen nikret ner mitzvah. Therefore, it's called ner mitzvah, the candle of mitzvah. Shaner talui bepetila, because the candle, the ner, is connected to the petila, which is chomer. Ubeshemen shehem chomrim, and with oil, which is chomrim. V'lachen mitzvah nimtzet tachat ma'arechet hazman. Therefore, the mitzvah is connected to the time, right? It's related to time, okay? The mitzvot tluyot bezman. That's why we have mitzvot haseh shehazman grama. We have mitzvot haseh shelo hazman grama. There are times. L'fi zeh sheva sfirot habonot et olamenu, the 7 sfirot that build our world. Nikraem guf hamelech, are called the body of the king. L'fi shehem bonim et olamenu hagashmi, because they build the physical world. That's the 7 sfirot. The mitzvot hem keneged ashir koma shel adam elyon. And the sfirot and the mitzvot are vis-a-vis the Adam, the komo shel Adam elyon, the shir koma, which is the image that we talked about of the spiritual world. The chol mitzvah kishua keneged ever achad min hashiur koma, and every mitzvah is connected to one of the limbs of the shiur koma. That's what we understand. There are 248 mitzvot aseh, which correspond to the 248 bones. And there are 365 mitzvot lo taseh, which correspond to the 365 limbs and sinews. Yes? Limbs and sinews, yes. Sinews and veins. V'lachen, shivua shi keneged sheva sfirot ena yichola levatel et mitzvah. Therefore, shivua cannot cancel out a mitzvah. She be'olamot kenegda. It's because it's in the worlds. Mashen ken a neder, but a neder should be chaya melech. The neder is chaya melech. Shia or me'al hanhagat hazman, has nothing to do with the time. Therefore, it's completely chomari. It's not chomari. It's completely spiritual. The ner mitzvah yechol levatel mitzvah. Where do we see an example where a mitzvah can be canceled? Where? Tell me how. What you said?
Well, someone's dying.
Okay, but that's not, you're doing the mitzvah pikuach nefesh. You're not canceling. Shabbat is pushed aside. Where do we see an example of a mitzvah that is pushed aside?
Shabbat, or no, yeah, Shabbat.
I don't mean push aside because God said it's pushed aside. I mean it's pushed aside because the rabbis said it's pushed aside.
18, cancel. They have vote.
What mitzvah did the rabbis cancel?
When you daven on a Yom Tov, falls on a Shabbat, they don't say it's
Nah, that's not. I'm looking for a mitzvah.
Marrying 2 wives.
Shofar. On?
Oh, Shabbat.
Shabbat.
Oh, is it worried about
As far as the Torah is concerned, you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, even if it's Shabbat. The rabbi said, no, you're not blowing shofar on Shabbat. Sukkah, lulav and etrog. You don't take it on the first day. The Torah says, "Ulkachem lachem bayom harishon." Yom harishon. No, as far as the Torah is concerned, if Yom harishon is on Shabbat, you take lulav and etrog. That's the mitzvah from the Torah. The rabbis came along and canceled and said, "No, you're not going to take lulav and etrog because why? Someone might come to carry it." So you see, the rabbis have a koach to uproot the mitzvah. But that's only a situation where it's not completely uprooted, because there are years where you're going to do it the right way, and there are years where you're not going to do it. I'm going to continue what I'm saying before we go there. There's an example of a rabbi who did something that was against the Torah for all time.
Rabbi.
A very big rabbi. I'll tell you his name. You tell me what he did. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi.
He wrote down.
He wrote down the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Hello, wait a minute.
Hey, what's that?
Ba'al Peh, what does that mean? You can't write. They could take notes, but there was not allowed to be any systematic writing of the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Rabbi Yehuda, why? Because that's what God said.
Didn't God want everybody to learn the Torah?
Yes, he wanted them to learn the Torah the way they learned it the right way, which is you go from...
He knew that God knows
Stop. Okay, let's just get the thought through and then you can ask your question. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi made a decision that he's going to organize and systematically put down the oral law, which was a violation of God's will, but not. How? Et lasot lashem hefero torotecha. Look at the language of the rabbis. Et lasot lashem, that's a pasuk in the Tehillim. It's a time to do for God. Heferu toratecha. They have canceled your Torah. Yes? So Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi saw that we're going into the exile, and in a short period of time, people are not going to be able to learn very well, and God forbid the Torah is going to be forgotten. So what did he do? He wrote down the Mishnah. The Gemara's answer is, well, what do you do in a situation where there's a cancellation of the Torah? How do you protect the Torah? Hefero toratecha mishum et lasot lashem. When there's a time for do for God, sometimes what you do is you cancel the Torah in order to do for God. That's exactly what Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi did. Even though he wasn't allowed from the Torah to write down the Mishnah, he did it to save the Mishnah. Why is the language heferu? Hafarat nedarim. I think this is connected. The language is hafara, which was one to be fair. It means to nullify. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi nullified the prohibition of writing the Torah Sheba'al Peh down, and that was nullified forever.
Was that
But you just said you can't write it. You said you gotta listen to God. You can't write it down. And now you say you could write it down?
We just learned.
I just told you that.
We
You
just
said, no, you can't go like that.
we just learned that a shivu'ah does not have the power to nullify a mitzvah, but a neder does. I'll ask a question. Let's say a person makes a neder nazir that he's not going to drink wine for 30 days because the minimum amount of nazirut is 30 days. And when does he make the neder? He makes the neder on the first day of Nisan. What happens sometimes Pesach? Arba kosot?
That counts.
No,
From the grape.
he cannot have anything from grapes. So his neder has canceled out this mitzvat aseh. Yes? I'll give you another example.
Yeah, but why would you want to make
I'm going to give you another example. In the Megillah, what does Esther say? I'm going to go to the king, and I'm going to ask him, even though he didn't invite me, but I need you guys to do something here to protect me. What did she fast for 3 days? What day did she tell Mordechai that? The 13th of Nisan, or the 14th of Nisan. And that's why the next pasuk says, Vaya'avor Mordechai. What does it mean, Vaya'avor? That year, they did not eat matzah on the first night of Pesach. What's that called? It's a mitzvah taseh. Because they made a neder that they weren't going to eat for 3 days. Therefore, that included Pesach. What we just learned, a neder has the ability to, now that does mean a person doesn't have to teshuvah afterwards because he didn't do a mitzvah taseh. So that's why the rabbi, it's very clear, it says about the tefillin, he makes a shivu'ah. That doesn't work. but it doesn't say about a neder. If he makes a neder, then he has to fulfill the neder, and then he gets punishment because he didn't wear tefillin that day.
But why would you want to make a neder in the first place?
We're talking about the koach, the power of a shivuah, versus the koach of a neder. You shouldn't want to do that at all. Of course not. But at the end of the day,
Lower the ramifications of the punishment.
no.
So why do it anyway?
Why do what?
Like, for example, you're saying that if you make a neder not to put on, that you're not going to be putting on film the next day for whatever reason you need to get, right? There's an emergency 3 days away, right?
Okay, well, let's think about that. You're trying to, in that kind of situation, you're in a lot of trouble because you're thinking to yourself that the mitzvah of tefillin tomorrow is going to be worse for me when it can't be because God commanded it. But you have the koah. I'm not saying this is a good eitzah. It's not a good advice to make it. First of all, it's not good to make neder at all. We just said if you don't fulfill neder, what happens? You lose things, right? But we should not have neder. But there are certain circumstances where a person can make a neder in order to strengthen their mitzvah observance. That's allowed. But you have to be careful not to make a neder that's going to cancel mitzvah observance. But we see from here, a neder has the power to stop you from doing a mitzvah. There's other places where it's discussed. What if a man makes a neder that he's not going to be with his wife? He makes a neder that he's not going to have relations with his wife. He has to divorce her. Why? Because he's obligated to have relations with his wife. If he chooses not, makes a neder like that, the neder works, but then he's got to divorce the wife.
Because he's over on.
Because he has a mitzvah from the Torah, onata lo yigra, it's a lo ta'aseh. So a neder has the ability to remove one from doing a mitzvah aseh, not advisable at all, okay, under certain very rare circumstances. As another example, Eliyahu Navi, what did he do? He told he's going to bring a sacrifice on Har HaKarmel, which was outside of the temple.
Okay, obviously.
Har HaKarmel is in Haifa. And why did he do that? Et lasot l'Hashem.
And this is when Bamot were already.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
So it sounded weird.
For the Nevi'ah Baal, correct. The 400 prophets of the Baal. That's correct. Eliyahu Navi. So we understand that there's this concept of et lasot l'Hashem hefero toratecha. I'm going to suggest it's done through a neder. I'll give you a more modern example. The Syrian community has a prohibition against converts. They don't accept them. They don't convert them. And if anybody, I'm not saying this is an agreeable thing. This is what they do in order to prevent there from being assimilation. And there's only one community in the world that can say we have zero assimilation. That's the Syrian community. Because once a person assimilates, they're out of the community. Self-fulfilling prophecy, which basically keeps everybody in line. No one goes out with a shiksa because you can't bring her home.
So you're saying they have cherem there.
They have a person who marries a shiksa or a convert, thinks you're going to convert her, okay? They are thrown out of the community. Now, what's the problem? We read in the Torah, you have to love the convert. You're not allowed to distance the convert. What do? They do that. But they have to renew it every 20 or 30 years. Why? Because it's a neder.
Oh, that's how it works.
The edict, all of the synagogues, every 20, 30 years, have to re-sign the document with their new rabbi and their new president of the board. They have to re-sign the document saying we're not going to accept converts in our synagogue. And if they don't, they're out of the community. The synagogue is out.
This doesn't sound like the book I read that says the only people who do it with their hands sticking out are minkach.
Munkach.
Nobody else in the world does it except them. They're the only ones who do it.
All right, I think we'll stop here, yes? Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.